So first and foremost, man, thank you for making the drive over here because I know that you coach wrestling and you have a full docket and you still made the time to come over here and speak to little old me. So I appreciate that, Alejandro.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. I started my mixed martial arts career with you at St. Charles MMA here in the St. Louis area, St. Charles area, and it's nice to get back to, I guess you could say, to my roots where it all kind of started, you know, and I appreciate you inviting me out here. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. Forgive me for the construction. We had like this month and a half hiatus, and it was very frustrating. But no, I'm glad that you brought that up because I was going to talk about how I met you, and it was originally at St. Charles MMA. I know my story. I know why I was there, but I don't necessarily know what brought you through those doors. I know that you had trained a little bit with Julius Anglicus in wrestling. Was he the one that told you to come to St. Charles MMA? How did you end up on those mats?
So it's kind of funny. So 2011, my true freshman year, at the time I was wrestling at Missouri Baptist University. I eventually transferred to Lindenwood University and finished out my wrestling career there. But I was at Missouri Baptist University in 2011. Julius just transferred from Brockport University in New York, so his first year was there as well. We were both brand new, didn't know each other, became roommates, just luckily. Like, it was, I didn't know who he was, he didn't know who I was. We met each other and we hit it off. We became like really close friends. And for those of you that don't know Julius, he's freaking 6 foot something, ripped up. Everyone swears he's on steroids. That guy's natural. Trust me, I lived with the guy for years. I lived with him for like
he's
4 or 5 years.
He's incredibly nice. Like, if
such
you
a
talk
nice
to
guy.
him, intimidating
Like,
visually.
He looks like an offspring of Drago from Rocky Four. Like
the Lithuanian Drago.
Yeah. And me and him hit it off. We loved it. We had a great time. And I just he had like these aspirations to be a fighter. I at the time.
Oh, really? Even when he was wrestling?
Yeah, he was doing his first coach, kind of like even while he was wrestling back in New York in high school, was like a big high level karate guy.
Oh, okay.
And like so he kind of got into that.
Planted the seeds.
Yeah, and that kind of like started him off with the striking. Then he started mixing around with kickboxing here and there. Nothing serious at all yet. And I had ties with like friends, and I had ties with ex-girlfriends that were into MMA and stuff like that. So like I was kind of like dabbling back and forth. We all watched the UFC back then as wrestlers and stuff, going through the ropes of high school. So me and him were talking about it, and then we met Alpos Kilic. He's the first Turkish UFC fighter ever. He was a grad assistant coach at Missouri Baptist. So he was one of our coaches at Missouri Baptist, and he was fighting professionally at the time, actively for the UFC under Mike Rogers at St. Charles MMA. So we started wrestling. We became close with Alp because he was a high-level wrestler. He's from Turkey. He was a Turkish Greco-Roman national champion.
Yeah, him and Sampo at the time, they were both flyweights.
Killers.
When the UFC was just bringing in the flyweight division, they both got signed roughly, I want to say like maybe a month or two apart.
Yep, both from St. Charles MMA.
Yep.
And Alp just said, like me and Julius had expressed to Alp, like, hey, that's something we want to get into once we're done wrestling. So literally within the first couple of months before season even started, me and Julius together at the same exact time were going to St. Charles. And I remember the first time we ever went, we went to this like first gym. It was over in like off Mexico Road. It was like
the big one.
Yeah.
The big it was like a warehouse.
Yeah,
they repurposed the warehouse.
Me and Julius only went there like maybe a handful of times. You could count on one hand because we got so busy with wrestling. But like slowly as our wrestling careers got to like the middle end, that's when we really started spending lots of time in St. Charles. I mean, even in the first couple of years, man. I mean, we were when wrestling season ended, we were at Mike's all the time.
How was that with wrestling though? Because wrestling is not one of these sports, especially at the college level, where you can kind of like half dabble in it.
Well,
so you're going to school obviously, and you're wrestling at a college level, which means you're facing other killers. I understand that you're slowly but surely developing this passion for mixed martial arts, but at the same time, I mean, you're still competing at a high level. Explain to me balancing this.
So any intelligent human being that is a high level wrestler, when it's wrestling season, it's wrestling season. We don't go. The only time we ever go to St. Charles in May during actual wrestling season was to cut weight, to get extra workouts in, stuff like that. Like when wrestling season's on, wrestling season's on. We're not
use the gym as like an open mat for wrestling
if we need it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Mike was always very supportive, and he understood. He was a collegiate wrestler, for SIU Mo State before they lost the program. I mean, he understood, and he's always been so supportive. he knew which people were real and he knew which people were fake. And he if there was ever guys that needed help, he always took care of them. And he took care of us, and he looked out after me and Julius like we were his sons, and he still does. And he looks after Julius still to this day, and Julius has always been loyal to him. And we just knew that collegiate wrestling was so hard that you had to prioritize your training with wrestling. So, off season we trained MMA, and we wrestled all the time at St. Charles. You know what I mean? We had wrestling practices that I ran. I ran wrestling practices all the time at St. Charles.
I remember I used to go to them.
Yeah, and they were great, and we would get, I always stayed active. I was never just like sitting on the couch working jobs. I worked in bartending on nights and all that stuff.
You used to bartend at, was it Mission Taco in Soulard?
No.
Or was that Jason Slattery?
That was Slattery. So I worked with Slattery for a little bit, but at the time, there was this place in Central West End called the Mandarin Lounge.
Oh, that's right. And Julius used to be...
Yep. Me and Julius got in there at the same time. So me and Julius...
I remember because Julius used to get me in. I didn't have to pay the cover. I was like, I'm not man. Saved me $10 at the time.
Yep. It was the best.
For a broke college kid, $10 was everything.
Yeah, dude. I loved it too, man. Because like the Mandarin Lounge wasn't like a rough lounge. It was like a nightclub, dancing... like really good-looking people, and it was like all
wealth.
Yeah, it was all rich kids. It was all attorneys and doctors and students that were trying to become pharmacists.
Being a bouncer there wasn't a bad job.
It wasn't bad. Maybe we threw out one guy a month, two guys a month. It didn't get very rowdy, and everyone was tipping really well because everyone had money, and it was a good time. Every once in a while, you'd get guys that show up to the door and they would pick their arms up like they needed to be body checked. Like, hey, we don't do that here. You're good. Maybe we should pat you down. I don't know.
Terribly sorry to interrupt the content that you're enjoying right now, but if you've been watching our content for the past couple of months, you realize that Easy Talk is a brand new podcast. We're genuinely trying to figure this thing out as we're going. Some growing pains for sure. If you are genuinely enjoying this content, we feel very humble in that, but we would like to ask that you would also subscribe and like to the channel, simply because it does help us in the algorithms and ultimately to grow. So take a second. I'd really appreciate it. And on with the show.
But it was a good time. I had a lot of fun there because it was just all the St. Charles MMA guys working. So we all got along really well.
Yeah, you guys would train together, work together. Kind of engross yourself in the lifestyle.
It's a funny story. Me and Julius were so close, back then. When I left MOBAP, he still had one more year left there. And I had like 3 more years at Lindenwood. So we were apart for like 1 whole year, which sucked because we were really close friends. So I said, Julius, listen, the second you get done at MOBAP, you can move into the dorms with me and just live under my bed, and we'll like hide it, like we put a blanket over it. And I said, listen, on top of that,
how do you hide a 6'5", 230 pound Lithuanian animal?
So then I'm like, on top of that, bro, listen, they hand out master's programs here like candy. I can get you a master's position, a grad assistant position, running the gym as the person that does the check-in at the gym, the local, like the gym in the school.
Yeah.
All he does is like check your ID, scan it,
make sure you're a student.
Yeah, make sure vacuum every now and then, titty tidy, this that. Pay for your whole graduate degree for free.
Did he get it?
Yes.
Good for him.
When he graduated with his bachelor's. He wanted to get his master's. I said, do it, apply. He applied. He got the job. No, he didn't have to pay for nothing. He lived under my bed, literally. So I got a house, like right after. I got a house. They had off-campus housing at Lindenwood. So I had this house, and I had this like bed that was raised. So we put a mattress underneath it. I took a blanket and I covered it so you couldn't see there was anything underneath it. It would just look like storage.
Yeah.
And Julius lived under my bed for like 3 years.
Jesus Christ. What were you so worried about, like when you say like hiding, like? I mean, obviously people are going to see him coming in and out, right? So
they did, but no one's going to bother him. We didn't have, so we had an RD, but it was off-campus housing. So the resident director, he would say, "Hey, I'm coming by so and so when and when."
Kind of give you a heads up.
Me and Julius didn't party. We didn't do drugs. We didn't smoke dope. We weren't, messing around like that. We didn't cause no ruckus.
Just getting an education, sleeping under no nothing.
Yeah, we were doing, we were just hustling.
I love it.
He loved it because literally, where we lived, he could have jogged 15 minutes to St. Charles MMA. It's down the street.
Did St. Charles MMA had just recently moved?
They had already moved. When I transferred to Lindenwood, they had already been at that new location for like 2-3 years.
Yeah, because I remember.
Yeah, I met you at the new location.
Yes, I was gonna say that. That's actually because when I first started training there, they were at the warehouse, and I remember I was like, when I started my amateur MMA career, we were in the basement of a pizzeria where you would be lucky if those mats were mopped. Funny story though, never got ringworm, never got staph. So I'm actually a big proponent on like you get ringworm and staph from the people, not the mats.
That's true.
Like if you're rolling with some funky motherfucker who smells like shit.
I'm gonna tell you something right now that a lot of people are gonna be like, I knew it. But okay, listen.
You were the ringworm guy?
No. Listen, when I wrestled in college, I always got ringworm. I always got stuff. I didn't get staph very often. It happened like once, maybe twice in my collegiate career. Every once in a while. But ringworm, always had ringworm. Couldn't get rid of it. I would get rid of it for a month, have it for a month. Get rid of it for a month, have it for a month. All my friends too. Always. We mopped the mats before, we mopped the mats after. Didn't matter. It was like, what the heck? I eventually moved. We never had issues with that really at St. Charles either, honestly.
No, I never had any of that problem in MMA. Yeah, but you're also like high school wrestling with a bunch of adolescent guys who don't shower regularly.
They get home from school, they get home from practice, and they go play video games for 4 hours, pass out, shower in the morning.
Yes, exactly.
That's the
versus
problem.
like the adults that come to like an MMA class or
they go
adult jiu-jitsu,
to the locker room,
they're either going from work, so they're not even like funky, or they're functional adults, so they smell great.
They know better.
Yes, it was never an issue.
Where I was going with this is at the Daisy Fresh laundromat when we lived in the gym. On those cracked ass, scary looking mats. I know everyone's seen, like most people that do jiu-jitsu or have done MMA, maybe you've seen them in a documentary, maybe you haven't. But we trained hard. We sweat and soaked those mats every day for years. I lived in there for 4.5 years. No heat, no AC, lived on the mats.
Jesus.
We never washed the mats, ever. Not once. We squeegeed all the sweat off the mats and let it dry. And for the first 4 years I was there, never did I ever get anything. No, neither did anyone else around me. In fact, and I'm not proud of saying this, but we were just poor and we didn't have a lot of places to go. So there was times where we didn't shower for 2-3 days, and I'm not proud of saying that. But we did.
Meaning you didn't have a place to shower.
Yeah, so there was no shower in the gym. We just had one sink, one toilet, and I would do like a
bunch of savages.
Yeah, I would just like shower my head and try and get it off my ears and my face and try and get there the best I can. But there was days where I wouldn't shower for 2-3 days and never get nothing. Where we started getting funk was when the documentary blew up. The documentary got big like in year 4 or 5, and it became like world renowned in the jiu-jitsu community. Yeah, like I remember. You couldn't go anywhere and someone would be like, I've never heard of Daisy Fresh before. If they're doing jiu-jitsu seriously, And we started getting people from all over the country, all over the world. And then the funk started. That's when we started getting it.
Meaning people were coming to train with you guys.
And at the time, we didn't realize that was why. We thought, man, our time ran out. It finally happened. Yeah. We're just dirt bags.
No.
Then we were scrubbing the mats. We were doing everything. Still happening. We're like, what's going on? Finally, Heath runs into John Danaher while we're coaching at Who's Number One, and John's like, "So, how's the staff going for you?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, you're starting to get all these people from different places. You're getting staph infection, right?" He's like, "Actually, yeah. How do you know?" We've been dealing with it, but what made you say that? He said when they were at the Blue Basement in New York City at Henzo's, when they blew up, they got so many people coming from all over the world that they bring a different bacteria in their gut biome, and that different bacteria. So we're from here, so like me and you will roll around, and the bacteria, we're used to it. But someone from a different place in the in the U.S. or really from other countries, they come and they bring this different bacteria, and just because maybe we're immune to this strain of staph, they bring this new strain from their mats, from their country. And that's what happened. He said, you get all these visitors, they bring a different strain, and it just
of this fungus or bacteria.
It hits you, it hits me, it hits them, it hits even the people that are washing and doing the right thing. So that's kind of where we came to realize that's what it's from. It's from large amounts of different visitors and stuff like that. Because you can do everything you can, and at the end of the day, you can't follow somebody at home and watch them clean their ass.
For me, it was always anecdotal, right, over the course of time. So I agree with everything you just said, actually.
Yeah.
But I also will say that there's one more variable in that isn't really necessarily talked about. So I don't know necessarily about the gut biomes and all this stuff, but the way I always thought about it was even down to the oils in your skin. When you start sweating, It can be something as simple as like the diet you have. I can tell who I'm like, if I'm rolling with someone, I can tell how much water they drink just by like their sweat.
Yeah.
And like the odor that comes off their body. If they're sweating like crazy and there's no odor, this motherfucker drinking like a gallon or 2 gallons of water a day, he's flushing his system, he's clean. But if it's like that yellow, dirty sweat, you're dehydrated, you're drinking bullshit.
It's got that stank to it. I know exactly.
Not just that, but when you get a cut. So a lot of these things, skin deep, right? You'll be fine. But then someone maybe clips you with like a nail or something, and now you have like a little bit of cut on your hand or whatever, and that's when you can easily get these things, because now it's not just skin level, it's getting right underneath,
literally,
into the bloodstream, and that's how you, in my opinion, based on anecdotal evidence, I'm sure there'll be some dermatologists like, you're wrong. Fuck you, dude. I've rolled for long enough.
Listen, I don't care what any doctor says. Doctors don't know shit when it comes to grappling and MMA, when it comes to skin funk, and when it comes to cauliflower ears.
Yeah.
They don't know shit.
The last time I got anything was high school wrestling. The last time I got anything. I haven't gotten
high school and college
since.
is the last time I really got the funk, like really, really.
I also think it's the fact that like you can, when you're in high school or maybe even college, you can't choose your training partners. It's the same guys, right? Like at Afton High School, I was like, I couldn't be like, no, yes, whatever. You rolled with who was in there. But then once you get to a certain level, like especially in MMA, it was the same 4 or 5 guys every day. You know what I mean? And as long as you don't change that variable too much, things don't get too crazy. But I could see how if you guys are doing this documentary that goes viral, now a bunch of people are coming in, you're exposing yourself to all these different variables. It doesn't shock me that now you're starting to get some of these things. I think hygiene and all these things go a certain way, but at the end of the day, when you bring in people from different walks of life, of course you're gonna get some
and we've handled that.
Not just skin stuff, but like colds, flus, everything.
Dude, it's not an issue for us. It was shocking in the beginning when it like first started happening, but like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
We move on. We still have a successful program. We're not.
Well, you're one of the best. You're one of the. I would say like probably the best BJJ program within like a, I don't know, 300-400 mile radius.
I would say we're the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program in the United States of America, ran by Americans. Okay, I'm not saying that we're better than Atos in San Diego, but we're the best American ran Jiu-Jitsu program in my personal opinion. I think Atos is great, and they're one of the best in the world. They're a Brazilian association, Alliance, a Brazilian association, Gracie Barra, a Brazilian association, Checkmat, a Brazilian association. These are like the leaders of jiu-jitsu that have been around for the last, I don't know, couple decades since jiu-jitsu's been cool. They have hundreds upon hundreds of associations. There's Gracie Barras in St. Louis. There's Gracie Barras in Portugal, in China, in all types of different places in the world.
Can I ask you about that real quick, if you don't mind? Mm-hmm. Do you feel like sometimes the commercialization of jiu-jitsu is very reminiscent to what happened with karate?
1,000%. It's all about printing money.
Yeah.
And you see that all the time. You see a guy with a brown or a black belt, and they can't even tie their belt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But where I was getting with this was
regarding
we only have a handful of associations. Heath created this association, on his own. Rodrigo Vagues, who gave him his black belt, and that's who gave that opportunity to him. But he really built this on his own. He'd been coaching people and been doing jiu-jitsu since he was 14 years old. A lot of people don't know that. Mostly No-Ghee. He was self-taught.
How old is he, if you don't mind me asking?
He's 10 years older than me exactly. I'm August 2nd, he's August 16th. I'm 31, he's 41. So
he's someone I need to get on this podcast.
Dude, he's my best friend, he's my mentor, he's my coach.
I'm sure he's super busy.
He's very busy, but
we'll
talk. We'll talk. He's got a million different stories, probably 10 different stories better than mine. But he deserves it, man. He went from learning how to do jiu-jitsu in the grass with his brother. His older brother was 8 years older than him, and he was getting into no holds barred fighting. Back at the time is what everyone called MMA.
Yeah.
No one called it MMA. It wasn't a thing. It was called no holds barred fighting. So his brother was.
But that's how they were also marketing it.
The
early UFC.
Yeah, it was just so early. This is before the UFC was even around.
Yeah.
And his brother was fighting in these fights, and he was helping him train. He was like 14 at the time, and back then they just trained in the grass or in their living room, and they would beat the shit out of each other, man. And you know how they learned everything? They would go on to magazines. Like back then, I can't remember what the magazines were called. It was like Full Contact Fighter, Gracie Mag, all these different magazines. And you'll remember this because you're closer to my age. But Remember back then when you wanted your parents to get you something that you had to get a money order and send it in a catalog?
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, you remember
that?
It was a process. Nobody knows about it.
They had to get the cash before they sent you the product.
Yeah. So they used to stuff these DVDs in the not DVDs, I'm sorry. This is so far away, it was VHS tapes.
Maybe even floppy disks in between that and CDs.
They were VHS tapes. He told me specifically.
I know a guy who learned jiu-jitsu through floppy disks on his PC. And like each floppy disk, because there were only like 5 megabytes of data, each floppy disk
5 minutes
was
10
like,
minutes.
no, not even 5 minutes. It would be like 3 minutes, but it was like arm bar. And it would be like, this is how you do an arm bar. And then it's like knee bar, this. And it wasn't even like anything like super substantial. Like you would call this like the basics of jiu-jitsu, right? Like blue belt level shit. But back then, this was like the hidden science. This was magic. For those that don't know what a floppy disk is, it's the save icon.
Dude, my girlfriend, she don't know what I asked her, do you know what a floppy disk is? No. Do you know what it looks like? No. I was like, you're joking. Had no clue. I showed it to her. She's like, I've never seen one of those before in my life.
I had a kid ask me.
What?
I had a kid ask me because I had a floppy disk in my car once, and he's like, "Oh, you 3D printed the save sign," and I was like,
they have no clue.
And I was like,
the floppy disks have been erased from history.
all for the better. Forgive me, but let's go back to the to Phil.
Yeah. So he how they used to teach themselves was he would give his mom the money. She would get a money order. She would send it in the mail from the magazine company. They would send him a VHS tape. The VHS tapes would come from, if you wanted to learn from this Brazilian guy, they'd be in Portuguese, no subtitles.
Jesus.
If you wanted to learn from this badass Japanese Shudo fighter, no subtitles, all Japanese. And he would just collect these DVDs over time, and he watched them, and he would rewind them. And he'd watch them, and he'd rewind them. And sometimes he would rewind them, and the VHS tape would eat itself, And you know how it is. And, they taught themselves, man. They literally were, like, teaching themselves how to do jiu-jitsu back then through VHS tapes. I remember seeing, and then Heath had a whole MMA career, once he got old enough. And he was tapping black belts as no belt at all, never been in the gi. He was tapping black belts, brown belts, all these guys that had jiu-jitsu experience. He was leg locking them at will because he knew all this stuff that he learned on the DVDs, and he really drilled it. He was paying his friends. I'll give you $5. I'll give you $10 if you let me drill this many moves on you this day, and this day. And this is how he got better. He didn't have a choice. Everyone was telling him, you're wasting your time. Get a real job. Your karate bullshit is fake. It's not going to do anything for you. And he just didn't listen. And he just stuck to it, and he believed in it, and he freaking worked hard, and he had a very successful MMA career. And then finally, when he decided he wanted to get belted, he wanted to have a legitimate grappling. He wanted to learn the legitimate grappling. Yeah, he wanted to learn. So the closest place, Rodrigo's. He was driving an hour and a half from Mount Vernon to Rodrigo's. Got belted through Rodrigo, and he was making that drive back and forth, teaching his crew in Mount Vernon, going back and forth.
So when you say teaching his crew, like he would go train with Rodrigo,
Mm-hmm.
When he learned something from Rodrigo, he would also take it back to Mount Vernon, and he would teach the guys around him.
Yep.
God bless.
Yep.
Teach a man to fish, right?
Yeah, man. And he's a very loyal guy, and he's very persistent, very patient, and I owe him a lot. And he's a great person.
I could tell that you care for him deeply just by like the passion in which you speak about him.
Yeah, man. I mean, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be able to coach. I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do if it wasn't for him. He found me when I was in a very rough spot in my life, and
financially, you mean?
No. Just like in general, it was just like why the reason I left St. Louis area. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask you about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's take a step back because we were talking about how it is that I met you at St. Charles in May. You were talking about how you wrestled at MOBAP, transitioned to Lindenwood University. You got this itch for MMA, started training at St. Charles in May. That's how I met you. I remember at the twilight of my amateur career, you had actually just started yours. And I remember saying to everybody, I was like, dude, watch out for Alejandro. He's a motherfucker. Like he's a tough guy. You know what I mean? But then, and I believe you got like a couple wins and then you just like stopped competing in MMA.
Yep.
And that's kind of why the real reason I wanted to bring you on, outside of just like you and I have never had anything but positive, interactions, was I thought you were gonna like make a fucking run for it. And obviously you are, but in a different avenue, right? Like I think all these accolades, all these achievements that you've acquired in jiu-jitsu is also just as admirable. I don't want you to think that I'm like somehow diminishing that.
No, not at all.
But I remember when I left St. Charles MMA, I was like, Julius is gonna be a motherfucker. Alejandro's gonna be a motherfucker. And by the way, I say that in the
positive way.
Nicest of.
As a positive.
Yeah. That is a compliment. But I remember there was like certain guys, and I was like, these guys are the watch out for that.
I always appreciated you for that because I remember hearing you talk very highly about me even when I was that young, and I looked up to you, and I really appreciated it a lot.
Well, I as dumb as it sounds, like that quote, real recognize real. You were saying earlier how like Mike could recognize the guys. It wasn't just Mike, it was everybody else. Like you saw the guys that were putting in the hours, putting in the effort, and taking the lifestyle seriously. Because there was a lot of guys that come and go. There was a lot of guys that wanted to come in and train, look cool, take a photo, and then bounce, right? But then the guys that were like showing up on a Friday evening, right, for a spar or something, that was always like, what are you giving up for what are you getting kind of thing. It's like it's easy to train in the winter when it's cold and there's nothing to do outside. But in the summer when it's nice, you're still in here with no AC, sweating your ass off, helping somebody else get ready. That's a real motherfucker.
Oh,
right?
yeah, 100%.
What was it that caused that change? Like you were pursuing MMA, and then all of a sudden I look and like, I mean, you're like balls deep into jiu-jitsu. Was it the love of grappling kind of returning to that? Was it something that happened in MMA? Was it switching to Daisy Fresh and like that's a jiu-jitsu place, so it's like it was the natural transition? I'm trying to understand.
So it's an interesting story. It has nothing to do with any of that at all.
Really?
So you'll remember this when I tell you this now.
Yeah.
But so when I was in college at Lindenwood, I had just gotten married my junior year. I got married very young at 21. And
Really?
me and this girl, she wrestled at Mobap when I was there. We started dating. We fell head over heels, and we were really, really, really into it. We thought we wanted.
You were married when I met you?
Yeah. Yep.
Fuck, man.
Or engaged. I can't remember. Her brother was a professional fighter in California. I was spending a lot of time training MMA in California at the same time that I was training in St. Charles.
Okay.
So I was really getting a lot of good training everywhere because I was getting to train with like pros that were in the UFC and Bellator up there. I was getting to do awesome training in St. Charles, and like she had a lot of great connections on top of the ones I already had with Mike and everybody. And she was cool and we had a great time, but we were just too young, man. And I didn't necessarily want him to get married when we got married, but I cared about her so much, and she really wanted it. She was a little bit, her and her family were a little bit more religious. Oh. And I was okay with it. I just cared about her so much. I didn't care. I wanted to give her what she wanted. We got married, and she was there when I had my first, I think my first 2 fights.
The blonde girl.
Yeah.
Okay, I do remember this now. I do remember. Forgive me, blonde girl.
She was a wrestler
I don't
too.
remember her name, but we probably shouldn't say it at this point. So forgive me. But no, you're right, because you guys would come up and train together.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, forgive me.
No.
It's all coming back to me now.
I said you'll remember this when I tell you. But so that happened, years. And my senior year, I knew it was my last year to wrestle. So that whole summer, I dedicated it to doing my first MMA fight. So I trained all summer long, no messing around, everything right.
Yeah, you were with Jake and Travis Draper.
Dude, I had like 2.
You had a hell of a fucking camp.
I had like 2 fights scheduled. No one would fight me. Finally, I get on the fight hard, get someone to fight me. It was the coolest experience ever, dude. I had all my friends there, all you guys there, and then I had all my teammates from Lindenwood, my coaches, everyone. Because the coolest thing about Fireheart was that you got free tickets.
So everyone could show up.
Everyone could come. They didn't know about that $20 parking fee, though.
Did they fucking say something about that? Imagine getting into an arena for free and then bitching about parking.
Listen, it's the smartest thing in the universe.
You can't do that anymore.
They made so much money, dude.
Dude, I'm looking at doing my own promotion, and I was flirting around with that idea. Dude. The state won't allow it. You have to sell a ticket.
I wouldn't mind doing that in Illinois, man.
Do they have a...
I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. We'll get there when we get there. But man, it was a great time, man. And I won my first MMA fight. I told myself I'm going to go in there, take the guy down, choke him out. That's what I wanted to do. And my guys that were my boxing coaches, you remember Reggie?
Yeah, Reggie Murphy.
So my boxing.
He's the reason I was undefeated in boxing, dude.
Yeah,
one of the
great.
He's like
what was the other guy's name?
Under-recognized.
He was good too. Dave.
Yes.
I remembered.
Reggie and Dave.
They were cool, man.
Underutilized boxing coaches. Those guys were real.
They were real.
I need to get Reggie on here.
You should.
Now that we're going down memory lane.
I think I'm still friends with him on Facebook.
I think I am too. I need to reach out to him.
For real. But look.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
Me and you trained with those.
Dude,
those were our boxing coaches.
I forget how much of like a high school reunion this is turning into.
Those were our boxing coaches. So, the guy I fought, his name was Floyd Shahan. I actually liked the guy. We actually boxed with him at St. Charles together. I didn't, but he didn't train MMA at our gym. He just did boxing because Reggie and Dave were his boxing coaches. He trained at Armor or Shield of Honor or Kane Royer's gym. I can't remember what it was called, but he trained there.
I'm sorry, Kane Royer.
He trained there. And I remember those Reggie
Academy of Courage.
That's the one.
Academy of Courage.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Behind the CTE is
something like that. That was it though. That was it. But Reggie and Dave, I remember they were telling me, look, Joe, we cannot be in your corner for this fight. It's a conflict of interest for us because we coach Floyd also in boxing. We can't have your back on this one. We got to stay out completely. We can't have his back. We can't have your back. And I was like, I understand.
What is Switzerland?
I respect it. He goes, Joe, Floyd got good hands. Take him down and do what you do, and you'll win. Do not stand up with him. He got good hands. We've been working with him for a while. So I'm like, all right, these guys obviously care about me. I'm going to take him down. I'm going to submit him. And I go out there, and I'm like, and I just start trading with him. I try to go for a takedown. He pops up. I throw a jab, cross, and the cross cracks him. And I remember I just shot my jab, and I caught behind his head, and I threw 8 uppercuts, and like 6 of the 8 connected. And when he turned away, I threw a hard right and just stuck him, and he just dropped. And I remember thinking, holy crap.
Knocking someone out is crazy.
Yeah, it's always weird. You know, you always think when you get the knockout, you're going to feel like you hit the guy the hardest you ever hit him. But when you knock people out cold, it feels like you tap them.
If you hit them right,
at the end of that punch, you
never have to hit them hard.
Yeah, if you hit them at the end of that punch, it just flicks that chin perfect, and they just fall over like a stiff.
Meanwhile, Alex Pereira is like, hit him hard.
yeah, he kills them. But yeah, man, I remember thinking that. And then my second fight, and I'm like, take him down.
You're omitting one thing. The absolute, like, we lost our shit after that because we knew you as the wrestler guy. Yeah. And then for you to go out there and, like, start your guy on the feet, we collectively lost our shit.
We went crazy.
Yeah, dude.
We went nuts.
We went out that night. I remember that.
I think, like, over 10 people from our gym rushed the ring.
Yes.
Rushed the ring.
Julius, me, dude, a slew
Travis
of guys.
Draper,
Graham, Stephen Graham.
Yeah,
dude, we were losing our shit.
Yeah, Mike was like, whoa.
This is back when Fight Hard didn't have any security.
yeah, dude, we had, like, our whole team was in there.
Oh, man. I feel bad for Floyd now.
Yeah, good guy. I like him.
Great guy. Probably didn't want to see, like, a slew of dudes cheering on some guy.
But, yeah, man, it's just funny how life works. But, yeah, man, I did the fight, and when all this was happening, man, when all my and like even through like that was the beginning of my senior year. So after that fight, that was the end of MMA until wrestling was over. And like during this MMA stuff, my ex, and I was young at this time, and like I grew up in a divorced household, and I never wanted that for I never wanted that for myself. I was the oldest of 4, so my younger siblings, it was they cognitively don't remember too much about my parents being together, but I was like 12 or 13, I think, when they split. I think I was 12. Shit crushed me. You know what I mean? Like I wanted my parents to be together forever, and it just really was hard on me when I was 13. I was the oldest, and I kind of took the brunt end of that. And I was like just about to become a preteen, teenager. You're going through hormones. I was going through puberty. And it really crushed me hard. My parents' divorce was real nasty, and I just never wanted that for myself. Unfortunately for me though, we got married, and unfortunately, she messed around on me with not just random people, but certain people that
you knew,
some people that I thought were not just friends of mine, but teammates, people that were like close friends of mine. That like I had gotten,
they were never your close friend.
I had gotten scholarships for some of these people.
Jesus Christ.
From my hometown back in Florida, and helped them, and this is how they did me, and it crushed me, bro. I was devastated. How
old were you?
I was probably 21, like brand new, like just turned 21. Maybe, and I was like
barely a young
dude.
man.
I was crushed, bro. Like I wish I could have do things over because my senior year of wrestling wasn't much of a senior year because I just didn't have it in me. I was just mentally wiped out. I barely even wanted to finish. My wrestling coach, Chad Smith at the time at Lindenwood, he actually had a heart-to-heart with me, and he's like, "Look, dude, I don't want you to regret anything. Finish your season." And he was very nice to me, and he took me under his wing and was very friendly to me, and I finished my season because of that. But I didn't want to. I couldn't leave her right away. It was hard for me, And you know, everyone says, oh, if she cheats on you, you throw that chick to the curb, blah, blah, blah. It's not that simple sometimes. I was young too, man.
Anyone who says that's never been in love.
Yeah, man. And I was young. And, you know, I've changed. I'm a different person now than I was then. But back then I was just like, you know, I forgave her and I wanted to make it work. And, you know, I was, you know.
Was there a conversation? Like,
yeah, she told me one day and I was just crushed.
Okay, so you didn't like walk in on them.
No.
Hey,
one day, I think the guilt just got to her.
Gotten, yeah.
And she just broke and just told me everything. I was just couldn't believe it. Like I was so, didn't have a clue. I was like it wasn't like, oh, I knew it. It was like, what the heck is going on? Like I just remember being so like, what the.
Did you ever have a conversation with the conversations with the friends?
Yeah, I just told them, I said, look, dude, if I see you, stay away from me. You are no friend of mine. I don't want anything to do with you. I would never do this to anyone that I care about.
What was his response?
One just didn't say anything. The other said a bunch of like, I'm so sorry. Like, you're the incredible person. I just said, stay away from me.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor. Stay away from me. And
you know, oftentimes they call women like homewreckers, but I think it's like
dude, listen,
it's something that's like not gender neutral.
They're all
specific,
they were all in the wrong, and it crushed me. And it took me a long time to leave her. I couldn't leave her, bro. I couldn't.
When you say you couldn't extrapolate that,
I just
feelings. You
physically,
loved her.
Yes, I physically, and the idea of not holding my marriage together was like really hard on me. Like I said, like I came from a divorced household, so like that was
you
like,
took those vows seriously.
Yeah, that was like on me, you know. Like, and when like I didn't mess around, I never cheated, I never screwed around. Like you see a lot of guys nowadays, and they do whatever the heck they want. They've been married 25 years, and on the weekends when they do this or that, they do whatever the heck they want. You see it all the time. You got friends like that.
Alejandro,
I do. You know what I mean?
It's more common than not.
100%. That's why they make movies about it and shit. You know, I don't have that in me. I just don't. I'm a lucky guy. I don't have it in me. I see guys that are incredible human beings, and they can do that. I don't. Okay? Less drama for me. I don't have it in me.
You're a better man.
I'm a lucky guy. But that ruined me. I was not the same person. I was a shell of a human being back then. And I.
What do you mean by that? Like
I just was like, it was just destroyed me, bro. Like the only thing that gave me like solace, like gave me like peace, was when I was training for these MMA fights, because it would take my focus away so much, because I knew that if I didn't train properly and focus on these MMA fights, I'll get my ass whooped. So that, and Julius was such a good friend to me during all this. Mike was such a shoulder, and everyone was like, they were just such good people.
So this wasn't like isolation. People knew you confided in people.
No,
that's good, because you didn't keep it in.
Yeah, I never wanted to hold it in it, but like it ate at me, man. And like the paranoia, if you've ever been with someone that cheated on you, you try to make it work, the paranoia of being like, what's she doing? What's going on? Like it turns you into a different man. And then you're like obsessed and attached with the person. That's what happened to me.
Dude, I have a friend, not to deviate, I have a friend who's kind of going through that right now.
I see this all the time.
And I ask him all the time, I'm like, hey man, this is changing you. Yeah. Like you went from a guy who's like, you know, would never check the phone, would never, we were literally watching like the Ngannou fight against Anthony Joshua. And it was before the fight, he's like, well, she said she was coming home and it's like 30-minute drive and it's been 45 minutes. I go, are you seriously like checking your watch and timing when she comes home? And I asked him point blank, I go, is this worth it, man? Like, I understand you love this girl. Clearly you do, because you're willing to take yourself through this emotional roller coaster. But at what point is this like, at what point?
It's unhealthy, period.
Yes.
It's unhealthy, period.
Once you get I'm not saying, let me give you a caveat. So I have a wife and I have a kid. Mm-hmm. If my wife ever cheated on me, if it was like a one-off thing, to be completely frank with you, I could probably remedy that. We could probably do some sort of therapy. We could probably get over it. We also have a kid, so it adds a different paradigm to the line. But if she was like, you know, a one-off, one thing. But if it's like, hey, for the past year, there's no salvaging that, because for the past year, you've been able to do that.
You've had a choice.
Sleep next to me, act like nothing's wrong. This is not salvageable.
Some people can do that.
Some
people can do that and act like nothing even happened. They can look at the person every day. Whatever. I can't do that. They don't have it in me. No. But yeah, man, I freaking I see it all the time. I see it with kids.
I'm sorry that happened to you, brother.
Dude, listen, it's all good.
I know,
it changed me for the better.
I didn't know about this until just now,
it's all
forgive
good.
me, but
it's all good. I didn't tell a lot of people about it. You know, it's one of those
boy,
things.
did you pick a time to say it out loud.
I mean, dude, listen. I mean, when this happens to you, you do one of two things as a person. You tell everyone and put your business out there on Facebook and tell everyone you know, or you don't say anything because you're ashamed that this happened to you. I was ashamed that this happened to you. I was ashamed that my friends were disloyal to me, and the woman that I thought I loved and would do anything for was disloyal to me. You know what I mean? And that crushed me. And
all at the age of what, 21, 22?
21, yeah. And you look, dude, I see kids like this all the time, high school kids. I see adults, grown men at PSF that move to us with the same problem. I see it. But when you're in the thick of it, when you're that guy and this is happening to you, you don't think anyone can understand what you're going through. I listen to you tell me, is this worth it, Alejandro? Why are you with this girl? Is it worth it? It goes in one ear and out the other. I'm like, this guy doesn't understand what I'm going through.
Because I'm not in your position.
When you're,
honestly, I don't. Honestly, I don't.
It takes a good support system and a good friends to dig deep into you and pull you out of that hole.
And what, make you see reality?
Correct. And this is what happened.
Were you blaming yourself at first? Were you blaming yourself?
I never really.
Like, what did I do wrong?
No. Yeah, sure, I'd ask myself that sometimes, but I just didn't understand why.
Yeah.
I told I would do anything. If she said jump, I'd jump. If she said, if she wanted the world, she wanted the moon, I'd
She was your wife.
I would have did anything for her. If she, you know what I mean? Like, I was ready. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And it just didn't make sense to me. Why is she doing it? I remember calling her family. Why is this happening? Why is she doing this to me? You know what I mean? I just didn't understand. At the end of the day, we were just too young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we were just too young.
That's such a mature way to look at it.
Well, look, dude, this is over 10 years ago. So much, right? I mean, 20. Yeah.
It's been about that.
No, it was.
I'm turning 32. Almost. I'm turning 32 this year.
It was like 9 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
9.5 maybe. But dude, people change. You know what I mean? I'm a different person I was then. She is a different person than she is now. But look,
you guys, if you don't mind me asking, do you still talk?
Yes.
Cordial?
I'll get there.
Forgive me.
We'll get there in the story. Don't worry.
Forgive me.
No. It'll be better if I tell you how it goes. So I'm like at the end of my ropes, bro. I find out she cheats on me. I found out she cheated on me again with some other people.
So
it was like
happened the first time.
Dude, it happened.
You forgive.
You're
trying to.
Yeah, and it just kept snowballing more and more and more. I was
Oh
just
my
like,
God.
And like. At the time, I was cross-training with Mount Vernon. I was cross-training with Heath. I had met Heath actually at the hard fights, not at mine and at Julius's. He had a bunch of guys that would fight on the cards all the time.
Brandon Karcher, maybe?
Yeah,
he was one of the guys,
right? Andrew Wiltsey.
He got that flying armbar in one of the cards that I was fighting on.
Dude, listen, Brandon Karcher one time knocked Joaquin Buckley out. Joaquin Buckley bounced his head off the canvas, woke up, boom, hits Karcher, knocked him out.
Back when Joaquin was still an amateur. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think
knocked him out. He bounced off the
Julius was the co-main event that night. I was the main event that same night.
Yeah.
My God.
So me and Heath hit it off that night. He knew all this stuff about my ex and her dad and his MMA career, and he just knew about all this stuff from Southern California MMA that like I thought I only knew because I was going out there and training with her, and I was like, this guy knows a lot. I found out that Heath spent 2 years in San Diego and SoCal training at one point, so that's how I knew a lot of people out there.
Small world.
Plus, he was in the MMA world, and even back then, further beyond that, the MMA world is like this big.
Have you ever heard of the proximity era or proximity conundrum? It's like the more elite you get in a craft, the smaller your circle becomes because
I believe
there's
that.
only so many people that are at that level in whatever craft it is.
That's real.
In this particular instance, it's jiu-jitsu, but like let's say you're I don't know, like a developer or whatever. It's like once you get to a certain level, you're not talking to like entry level guys anymore. So it's like if Heath is at this like supreme level of jiu-jitsu, well then who's his inner circle? Well now it's other guys who are like a supreme level of jiu-jitsu. So that's why I say it's a small world because none of this shocks me.
No, and so I start talking to Heath. He's like, "Come down, visit, train. This guy's a world champ. This guy's a world champ. This guy's a Spanish champ.
Jesus,
we got like you can sleep in the gym if you want." I won't charge you nothing. Just
this is the very first conversation you're having with him, and he's like extending you this.
Come down, train.
So he has no idea who you are.
No, he
just
knows that Mike vouched for me and said he's a good dude, and him and Heath were close. Both him and Heath got their black belts from Rodrigo.
Same school, same teacher.
You know what I mean? They know each other through the years, him visiting and stuff like that. And Heath was teaching jiu-jitsu on the side. Every once in a while, he'd come into St. Charles and teach a class. You know what I mean? And then he always brought his guys down for the in-house tournaments that Mike would have for jiu-jitsu. And all his guys would just run everybody over. I remember the first time I ever competed against somebody from PSF, I was, Mike told me, Mike said, hey, Heath's got this guy. He's really tough. He's a world champ, but I think you'll beat his ass. And I was like, hell yeah, awesome. Keep in mind, back then, I was winning all the Fuji in the grappling industries and shit, and I thought I was the shit. I didn't understand that the IBJJF was like the pinnacle of competitive jiu-jitsu.
What belt were you at the time? White, blue?
Blue. I had just gotten my blue belt. Who
was it, Andrew?
Sure as fuck was. I remember I go up there and he was like, you're a better wrestler than him, just take him down. I remember I shot on him, he sprawled, he got up, and as I came up, he judo threw me in the air. The second I hit the ground, armbarred me in 5 seconds. And it was like, the match lasted, no shit, 20 seconds. I was like, and I remember I just got up and I was like,
what did Mike say?
What the fuck just happened? He's like, it's all right, man. You know, he's a good coach.
I love Mike.
He's like, it's all right, man. He's a world champ, blah, 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 blah. You know.
Oh, he was trying to gas you up. Like, don't be scared of him.
I wasn't.
He knew exactly.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what the fuck just happened? Literally, I remember thinking, what the fuck just happened? I was oblivious, though. I was just a wrestler, and I was doing jiu-jitsu for MMA. I had no clue. I was running the local St. Louis circuit, and I thought I was the shit.
You don't know what you don't know.
I just didn't know. You know what I mean? So Heath was like, just kind of like educated me a little bit, like, hey, come visit, come check it out. So I remember the first time I ever went, I reached out to everybody from St. Charles. I was like, I'm going to go to Mount Vernon. Who wants to come? And I remember only like 4 or 5 people came. It was Scott Thole, who was a brown belt at the time. It was Julius Ingliscus. It was Cortavius Romius and Travis Draper. And we all went down there and trained. And it was like being in a college level wrestling room. That's the intensity of the jiu-jitsu practice. Yeah. I'd never experienced anything like it outside of collegiate wrestling.
At Daisy Fresh?
At Daisy Fresh.
So a jiu-jitsu program with the intensity of a college room.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Hard. And
college wrestling room.
Yeah, and I was like, I can get used to this.
How does that work for a sport like jiu-jitsu, if you don't mind me asking?
I think it works great. I think it's what is happening right now at the pinnacle of jiu-jitsu right now. At the elite levels of grappling, I think that's what we were doing back then and still doing right now.
The mentality of wrestling, with the technique of jiu-jitsu.
With more wrestling involved.
Dominant positioning.
Look what everyone wants to see now in grappling. Everyone wants to see everybody on their feet going crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everyone wants to see everyone banging on their feet. That's what everyone wants.
When you say banging on the feet, forgive me, for some of the people that might be listening that don't understand the terminology of jiu-jitsu.
They just want them wrestling.
They want to be going for the takedowns. Yeah. They don't want to just be pulling guards, going for leg locks.
That's where the technical action is. You know, look, if someone can get on the floor and then make some action happen on the floor, I'm not saying people don't do that. They definitely do. But, you know, sometimes you get into
a game.
Yeah, and sometimes you get into these, like, stalemate, matches where, like, guys are just sitting on the ground the whole time and people are, like, on their phone, not even really watching, and they're yawning. Brother,
that's the one. So I love grappling. I gotta say this.
Yeah.
I love grappling. I love wrestling. I love jiu-jitsu. But I was at a BJJ show not too long ago, and I want to say of the 18 matches on there, 13 of them only got to the ground through pulling guard. It was clear that there wasn't that base of wrestling there, and it wasn't like trying to acquire a dominant position. It was like fighting leg locks with leg locks. And I thought to myself, like, it's not the entertainment factor. I can be entertained from it because I understand what they're going for.
And look,
it's from the lack of technique. Does that make sense?
No, for sure.
You should never fight a losing battle. Like, you're already a step behind with this leg lock. Why are you fighting this with the leg lock? You should try to be breaking it to get a dominant position to go for something else.
It's different if, like, you're watching two, like, high-level guys and they're strategically doing this and that.
To their credit, and it's a wide spectrum of skill set.
If you're a jiu-jitsu guy or a jiu-jitsu nerd, you can respect that. But
it's okay if you pull guard.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is this, like, stalemate of, like, you can't take me down. I don't know how to take you down.
Your cousin Billy and Bobby and your Aunt Susie, they don't know shit about jiu-jitsu.
Dude, if I brought my friend there.
They're going to watch that and they're going to go, is it over?
I brought my friend there who just got into jiu-jitsu. He's a white belt, and he's like, what the fuck am I watching? And I felt like, I was like,
that's the problem.
It's hard to explain this, but this is actually kind of high level in a way if you think about it.
Yeah, it can be an issue like that sometimes. And that's why I think that grappling is becoming a little bit more wrestling heavy. I think that's why the ADCC is blowing up so much. I think that's why those tournaments are starting to, like, get a little bit...
really pick up steam.
Notoriety and stuff like that. But,
let's finish if you don't mind, let's finish the topic of, like, your history, because once we get to the jiu-jitsu, I'm going to really start picking your brain with some questions.
You're good. So, all right. Before all that, I started going to Heath's. I'd bring my friends. I went the first time. I was like, this is what I need. This is it. I like it. So I drive back home, train at St. Charles. Still love it. I love the training there, but like that environment just had me like itching. So he's like, yeah, come back anytime.
It was the lifestyle that you had already achieved through college wrestling. You're kind of bringing it back, but not in the aspect of competing in wrestling, but competing in jiu-jitsu.
I didn't even really know if I wanted to compete in jiu-jitsu. At the time, I was still kind of like finishing my collegiate career, and I was still like gung-ho on being a UFC champ, being at the highest level of MMA that I could get to. You know what I mean? I didn't really want to let go of that. I was 2-0 in amateur MMA, 2 first-round knockouts. I didn't want to give that up. I was like, I'm going to go as far as I can.
Okay, you were just trying to strengthen that ground game even more because there was some guy that showed you another pinnacle.
And, I was anchored in St. Charles, St. Louis. I was anchored there. I was married. I had a wife. You know what I mean? So I was like going back. I was coming back. And then I was like, twice.
How far is that drive? An hour and a half?
Hour and a half. So an hour and a half down, train 2.5 hours hard as hell, drive 2.5 hours back. So I was doing that twice a week at first when I got hooked. Then I was doing it 3 times a week. At first it was like me and a couple guys. Then it was just me and a guy. Then it was just me. Then I was staying for 3 days out of the week, driving back and forth. Then I was going down there 3 times out of the week, go down, practice, come straight back. Then I was going down there, staying 2 days, then coming straight back. Then I was going down there, staying 3 days, then coming back. Then I was staying a week at a time, then going back. And I was just struggling, man. And Heath saw it. He saw it on my face. He saw it.
When you say struggling, you mean emotionally,
yeah, just with all that,
and
with that stuff with my ex. I couldn't let her go. I couldn't break up with her. I couldn't leave my wife.
How much time? Because I'm trying to get an accurate timeline on this one. So like,
it's basically
how much time from when the first infidelity thing happened to where we're at now? We're talking about like months, a year. How long have you been wrestling? It was
probably a solid like 6 to 8 months.
So you really gave it,
and I was like
as much as you could to try to make this work.
I was trying so hard to make it work, and it just wasn't working, man. I just kept finding out so much more, and we were trying all these different things. We were going to therapy and doing all this stuff, and it was just
Did
really
therapy help or no?
No, man, no. It wasn't me. I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just we were just too young. You know what I mean? At the time it destroyed me and everything, but like I just couldn't let go. I remember I did try and leave her once. I tried to leave her once. I stayed in Mount Vernon for 1 week, and I broke, and I went back, and I moved back.
Because you loved her.
Yeah, and I remember, I was back for like a couple of weeks, and then she crushed me again. Found out she was with somebody else again, and I remember that was that. And at the time I was working with Bellator.
I'm glad you say that you still talk to her because.
Wait till I tell you how. So Mike Rogers hooked me up. He was such a good guy. Before I started actually even, it was right when I started fighting. Like I had just had 1 or 2 fights, and Matt Marsden. I don't know if you know who Matt Marsden is. So he's famous cut man for Bellator. Yeah. Used to be at St. Charles MMA.
Used to train there, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And he came down to. Bellator was coming down to St. Louis for the Kimbo versus Shamrock
fight. Yeah.
And at the time, there was a guy that couldn't make it in the fighter operations, and Matt Marsden hit up Mike and said, "Hey, we got an opening in fighter operations. We just need someone to fill in. Who you got?"
What is fighter operations?
Just basically the people that they handle all logistics for the fighters during the week of fight week.
Be here at this time. Be there at that time. This is your training
I had a
facility.
list of guys. I picked them all up from the airport, bring them straight back to the hotel. We go to the office. I go through all their paperwork with them. Yada yada yada. The week of the event, make sure they're all taken care of.
Background shit, making sure everything's right.
Make sure they can get to the store, get their food, get their sauna, blah 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 blah. They have my number. I talked to all of them. It was
if they needed something, you'd call you.
We took care of them, and then the night of the weigh-ins, we were there. We made sure everything was good, and then fight.
Were you working at the time, or was this like a job that you needed as well?
I loved it. I needed the money, but dude, could you imagine being an amateur MMA fighter and you're hanging out with literal legends and training with them and hanging out with them?
Alejandro, I was broke until I wasn't. Let me put it that way. You know what I mean?
I still am kind of broke, but I'll get there.
But you know what though? I will say this: a man chasing his passions has his own riches.
Yeah, dude. Listen, I will be successful one day financially, but I'm not willing to give up my happiness and my dreams to be rich because I've had multiple opportunities to have finances at a healthy level multiple times, and I'm just not done doing what I'm doing.
You can always make money when you're old, but you can't pursue your athletic dreams when you are.
100%.
Marcus Aurelius once said, there was a quote by him saying like, essentially it was along the lines of like, shame on a man who spent his youth and never found out what his potential was.
Yeah. So. And I started late. you know?
Dude, I didn't really pursue my professional life until I was done with fighting.
Yeah.
When I was mentally like,
Yeah, when you're locked in.
I'm not going to be the best in the world. And if I'm not going to be the best in the world, what am I trying to do?
Yeah.
So then I was like, I'm married, I have a kid, time to switch. Up until I was like 28, don't get me wrong, I was fine, but by no means like. Anyway, we're talking about you. Sorry, forgive me.
No,
but I think you're on the right track. I think you're on the right track.
I relate, and I appreciate that. But what I was saying was, okay, so I was with Bellator, badass, right? And
rubbing shoulders with all these like legends and big fighters.
It was incredible. So I had made a lot of connections through Bellator, and I had made a lot of connections through going and training at all these MMA gyms in California with my ex and her people. And I made a ton of friends. I met a ton of incredible coaches. I met Hav from AKA. I met, the list goes on.
Javier Mendez.
Yeah.
The striking coach.
Yep. I met him.
I'm just adding a little context.
John McCarthy. Stitch Duran. The list goes on. I just met so many different people. I met, Romy Aram, who owned Millennia. I met tons of different people. And, Batista Mansouri, all these guys, and they all were so nice to me. And they had connections everywhere, too. And, they always told me, you want to come train here? You want to come stay here? We'll take care of you. So finally, my ex crushes me that last time, and I'm like, I'm done. I can't even be here anymore, so I know I won't come back. I can't be in St. Louis anymore.
What was the specific difference between that last time and the times before?
Because I had already left once. I had already left once. I went to Mount Vernon, and she pulled me back. I pulled myself back. I was weak.
But you were getting there. You were getting there.
I couldn't let go yet. And I just remember, and I felt terrible, bro. Because I let down Heath. I let down my teammates, Spash.
What do you mean you let them
because
down?
They believed in me. They believed in me to be there. They believed in me to be there for the team. They believed in me. Like, I was there.
That first time you left.
I was training with all those guys. Jacob Brooks, Spash from Australia. He got there the same time as me, and we were main.
But Alejandro, you didn't let them down.
I know, but at the time, that's how I felt.
That's how you felt. Forgive me.
He was my main He was my main training partner. We trained every day. We had a schedule.
You had some demons you had to take care of.
We had goals and stuff that we had to achieve together. And that always bothered me that I did that. But it's the way things happened. And I remember after that second time, I was like, I'm done. I packed my whole entire car, filled it to the top. You couldn't even see through the rearview mirror. I filled it to the top. Next morning, I was driving 36 hours to California. I was going to sleep in my car, and I was going to go to every single gym of every single person that I knew from Bellator and all my contacts, and I was going to figure out where my new home was going to be.
Can I ask you a question in between all of this?
Mm-hmm.
You obviously went to school and got a degree in something. Did the prospect of like, okay, I'm done, let me just start my professional life, it never even entered your...
Never even considered it. My dad immediately, when my divorce was happening, my dad was like, come move to Florida. I'm a broker, a real estate broker. I can get you started out. You're young. You're motivated. I can get you started out $77,000 a year guaranteed. You'll kill it.
This is back in like 2012?
2016. 2017.
77K back then is still a lot of money.
Yeah. I was just like, especially for a kid getting out of college. You know what I mean? So I was just like, I'm not interested. I appreciate, and I know I can always come back and do that with you, but I'm not interested. I don't want that. I can do that when I'm older if I need to. This is something
I'm sure the opportunity is still there if you wanted it today.
And look, your parents aren't going to understand. Unless they've done exactly what you've done.
Was your father kind of like...
He was worried. They were worried about me.
Yeah.
They were worried about me. I'm not mad at them for...
You're the oldest son, you said,
I'm the oldest.
Three younger, yeah, so the firstborn.
And I had my bags packed. I was going to hit the road. I was like, I can't be here anymore. I'm going to drive to California. On the way there, I'm going to call everybody I know. I'm going to sleep in my car. I don't know, for those of you people that don't know, but California is super expensive to live in. Everything costs tons of money. Gas, everything is crazy. But I was just going to live out of my car. And I remember that night, the night before I was going to drive off, Heath called me. And he said, hey, what's going on, buddy? What's the word?
He clearly knew.
Something he knew somehow. Someone, maybe Mike Rogers told him. I don't know. But he knew something. What's going on? I tell him, yeah, man, I'm moving to California. I can't do this shit no more. I'm gonna find a gym. I'm gonna train. I'm gonna finish my MMA career. He goes, Dro, Mount Vernon is an hour and a half away. Before you drive 36 hours to California in your car, do me a favor. Give me 2 weeks with you. After 2 weeks, you can live in the gym for free. You can train for free. Give me 2 weeks with you. You can live in the gym. If after 2 weeks you don't like it, I promise you I'll help you move to California. So I said, okay, fine. It's only an hour and a half. I'll do it. And next day I moved to Mount Vernon, and I've been there ever since. And
lived at the gym, trained at the gym.
lived in the gym, no heat, no AC, on the mats for 4.5 years.
But Heath never said a word.
And dude, at the time of my life, I was never suicidal or anything like that, but like at that time in my life, I was so crushed, and like that's what like I would assume real depression feels like, and like I was so feeble and just destroyed mentally. I just remember thinking to myself like my life's over, like this was everything to me, and it's gone now, and my life's over, and I just remember thinking that, and I always was so loyal to Heath because I felt like he gave me a new life. He like did nothing. He did nothing special for me other than get over a woman. I've watched him literally save people's lives from the brink of death, and I treat him like he saved my life, literally, like he pulled me out of the water from drowning. You know what I mean? But like to me, it was like he gave me a new life. At that time when I was so down, I thought it was over. I thought like all my hopes and dreams and everything was over. I was like, this is it. This is what my life's gonna be. I remember being in the shower, looking at the ground, and just thinking, this is it for me. Just crushed, And that man believed in me. And he had my back. When I ever felt sad, whenever I felt like going back, he kept me strong, and he helped me become a man.
God bless.
And I owe him the world for that. And that's why he's my best friend. And that's why I'm so loyal to him. And when he tells me to do something, that's why I do everything in my power to make sure it gets done. Because he helped me in a time where I was at my lowest. And he mentored me without me even realizing that I was being mentored. I just thought he was my friend and my coach. And I do a lot of things now as a coach that he did for me without even realizing it. And that's where it all happened. I never left trying to chase grappling. I never let, when I got there, he said, listen, Dro, I think it'd be best if you just take this MMA stuff and put it to the side. I know you're undefeated. And look, I'm not saying that you can't keep going undefeated and you won't knock everybody out and you won't become the UFC champ, but you're a good wrestler. You're okay at jiu-jitsu. If you could become world-class at jiu-jitsu and get your wrestling better, we can teach you how to strike legit in about a year and some change. Jiu-jitsu and wrestling are the hardest parts of MMA.
I agree.
If you can lock those two down at a world level, we can get you striking in a year and a half or so, and you'll take over. And he had helped me so much with that problem that I had that I trusted him. I said, okay, I won't fight until you tell me to. You're the guy. I remember Mike Rogers was very supportive. He said, go with Heath. Get away from here.
Wow, really?
He was it was like the opposite of what you would expect. He was like, go. I trust Heath. Get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry she did that to you. Go. Like, you need to get away.
It has to be said.
I talked to Mike.
I think the world of Mike Rogers.
I talked to Mike a lot. I used to roof with Mike through all this while this was going, and we would roof all day and then spar at night. It was fucking horrible. It was horrible. It was good though. It was good, but like I just remember being so beat up from roofing, and then we'd go beat the shit out of each other. I remember the first time I ever got on a roof. I said, Mike, what if I fall off? He said, you know how to break fall, don't you? I said, what the fuck, dude?
What a savage answer.
But
you won't be the first or the last.
Like, dude, what the hell? I was like, but yeah, man.
How many? Let me caveat with one thing. How many jobs do you think Mike Rogers has given roofing to some of the guys at the gym?
Every single human being.
Probably 100.
Any person under the age of 30
Hundreds?
years. Any person under the age of 30 years old has been offered to roof with Mike. I guarantee it.
Can I tell you something about Mike
It
Rogers?
pays good. It's not like he's offering you to freaking...
But it's not even that. Can I tell you something about Mike Rogers? Jay D'Amato was my first like MMA coach, and he was kind of like a very underground, like not a whole lot of guys know about him.
I know who that is. I can't put a face to him right now.
There had been some time between me talking with Jay after I had left, and Mike told me about Jay's funeral. And he's like, hey, just texted me out of the blue. I hadn't talked to Mike in years. He's like, hey, I know you train under Jay. He passed away. His funeral was on this date, this date, this date. And I remember thinking to me, like, I haven't talked to Mike in a year or two. And he just remembered that I trained under Jay, and Jay had passed, and like his funeral. So I went to the wake and the funeral. I remember like I saw Mike and everybody there, and it dawned on me, like at that funeral, how minuscule my career and my experience and everything that I have accumulated in my time in martial arts, how really small it was in this grand world of knowledge. Mike Rogers is like a juggernaut in terms of all the people he's trained under, all the people he's trained, all the people he's trained with. And even then, in this like grand expanse of his knowledge, he found the time to remember, like, oh, Jay trained this kid. Yeah. I should probably tell him that
he's sharp, man.
Mike is like...
He plays the quiet, giant teddy bear sometimes, but...
Mike is low-key. The term genius is thrown around, usually correlated to IQ. Duly noted. But I think genius can take on many forms. A genius of like emotional intelligence, like a stoic man who understands his soul and his heart and walks this world in this stoic bask of glory, like nothing really phases him. There's a genius to that.
Oh, 100%.
And Mike has had things that has happened to him and guys that have burned him and backstabbed him and, you know, and I don't think I've ever seen him retaliate or any of these things. And when I say like there's a genius to Mike Rogers, everyone that knows Mike Rogers will agree with me.
Yeah.
And everyone who's maybe just seen Mike Rogers might be like, what, that big guy? Like, there's a genius to Mike Rogers.
100. And you know what?
I owe him more than I think.
Yeah. And you know what? He's genuine. He genuinely cares about human beings. And if he sees you and he knows you're a good guy or a good girl or whatever, he will have your back and he will look out for you, even if he doesn't even know you that well. He's a genuine human being. And I've seen him take care of people he probably shouldn't have because he's just that good of a person.
He gives everybody a chance. He gives everybody a chance.
I learned so much from Mike. You know, how to be a good coach, how to be a good person. You know, he was a wrestling coach too before he was an MMA coach. You know what I mean? That's how he met Tyron Woodley. He was his wrestling coach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've learned tons. I've learned just as much of being a good human being as much as I learned from MMA. I still use a lot of Mike's MMA stuff that I learned from even back then.
Even separated from the martial arts, I you know, you were talking about some of the regrets that you have. I think, and I have very few regrets in my life. Truly, I do. But if I can think about one of the regrets I do have, it's probably the way I left St. Charles in May. To be completely honest with you.
Just to be real, that crushed me.
Did it?
I was crushed because you were the partner that I thought was going to help me get my get my hands right, because me and you would go back and forth, but you always had you were like a couple steps ahead of me with the striking because you had more experience, and I was just like always like trying to chase you to learn more from you. Because you had it figured out.
That's how I felt with wrestling. Because you were a better wrestler than I was.
Yeah, because you had it figured out. You were putting in your wrestling and your striking, and you were really getting it figured out. And like I was just like really trying to like get like you. So like when you left, there was there was a little bit of beef and animosity.
No, I'll tell you what it was more than anything.
I was just like I just wished everyone could just be friends again because I was like I didn't want you to leave.
I would make the argument that we are now more than ever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Hindsight is 20/20, and you know time heals all wounds. But like genuinely, I have maybe 4 or 5 regrets in my life, and one of them is the way I left St. Charles in May. Not that I don't dislike Mop or Wolves Den, and I don't dislike St. Charles in May or Mike Rogers. Just at the time, I was being really pulled and felt special and felt like, oh, I could really make a difference over here. And it just really enticed me, but it still Mike didn't deserve the way that I left. Mike should have gotten a much more formal escape, especially, and now that since we're talking about it, to be honest with you, the fact that my very first fight outside of that was then Cortavius, who then started training at St. Charles MMA, maybe was not the best way to...
The promoters took advantage of that too, bro. They knew.
But no one made me do anything I didn't want to do. I guess what I'm trying to say, Alejandro, is I'm not particularly happy about how I acted at those times.
I think everybody knows that, though. I mean, I think we all wish things could have been different back then. You know what I mean? Because like everyone from there, they all have love for you still now.
And I have love for them.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I'm happy and proud to be able to have this conversation with you right now, even everything that happened back then, you know what I mean? But
forgive me. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it's very beautiful how Heath kind of really stepped in when you needed it most, and where Mike could have been guarded
for sure,
or territorial.
For sure,
instead he was like, no.
Yeah, dude. Because look, I was very involved with St. Charles. I was there for every practice. I was there for any,
You're every gym owner's wet dream.
Yeah,
You're
man,
the best guy to have in the gym.
I trained really hard, and I was a wrestler, and I was hungry. I had goals. I listened to everything Mike told me, and I never disrespected him. If I ever messed up, I made sure I made it right. Like he was so good to me, and I never wanted to do him wrong. But he understood what I was going through, and it crushed me to even want to leave. But he said, "Dro, get out of here, Alejandro, get out of here."
You know what it is?
He was like, he said, you need to leave.
You know what it is? I'm a 31-year-old man who thinks himself a man. But when I look at guys like Mike Rogers, I realize I'm still a child.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. 100%.
People look at me like I'm hot shit. And I look at Mike Rogers like, no, that's the real motherfucking mountain.
I've learned, it took me to I'm almost 30 years old. I'm 31 now. But it took me to almost 30 to realize that you don't know shit ever.
Yeah.
The person 10 years older than you knows light years more shit than you. So that's why I think it's so good to have people like Heath in my, he's 10 years
not just know more, but then still have the heart and the empathy, right? Because like knowledge without action is...
And they've probably been through the shit you've been through, And
how lucky are we?
Lucky as heck, man.
How lucky are we to
I'm lucky, I'm really lucky that Heath and Rodrigo and Mike Rogers all get along so well because... those are all people that were huge parts of my life. Not so much Rodrigo. I just kind of know Rodrigo because he was Mike's coach and Heath's coach. But in a lot
of ways, you're third generation, right?
Yeah.
Rodrigo's first. Mike,
Helio, Hickson.
Actually, I guess Rodrigo would be like, never mind. You're like maybe fourth or fifth.
But yeah, man. And that's kind of like where my MMA journey ended. But I'm not done yet. I'm brown belt. I just took I won the Masters Worlds this past year.
I don't want you to skip over jiu-jitsu. I know where you want to take this conversation, but we have all the fucking time in the world, and I want to discuss this because you went from like an average grappler to a world-class grappler, and it took you believing in this individual who really made you kind of really focus on this aspect of your martial arts journey, and that is the grappling aspect, wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I call it grappling. You really were kind of bathed in those waters. What was that system like? How many years did it take?
It was intense, bro.
Different lifestyle, I'm sure.
It was, and listen, like, I don't mean this in a bad way to anyone, but I don't care how many black belts there are in MMA, even in the UFC or Bellator. The high-level grapplers will choke them out unconscious that are blue belts, even if they have black belts. That's how big the gap is. I mean, obviously there's black belt world champions that are doing MMA, but I'm saying like the average MMA guy that's like got a black belt and thinks his jiu-jitsu is good, like I promise you there's a blue belt world champ that will choke you unconscious and beat the crap out of you and pass you, get on your back and mount you. That's how big the gap is. I didn't know that until I rolled with these guys when I was working for Bellator. I rolled with these guys that were fighting in the UFC actively in the top 10. I rolled with these guys in Bellator, and I was a blue belt. And I was just training 2 times a day, 3 times a day at Daisy Fresh for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and beating the crap out of them. You know what I mean? If we were standing, they'd probably pwn me. But, you know what I mean? That's just what I'm saying.
There's something to be said about putting the game together. And let me say what you're trying to say, but in a more respectful way.
Yeah.
If you were in the cage and you had to put it together, who knows?
Sure.
But when you separate the mixed from the martial arts and you finite, you really focus on the finite aspects, it's no shocker that, Conor and Ngannou go to boxing and they lose. And it's no shocker that some of these UFC guys do some grappling tournaments and they lose. At the end of the day, MMA is the skill set of merging all of these.
100%.
Right? And that's its own skill set.
Yeah.
But I think we would deal from a lot of, we would learn from the hubris of our past and think to ourselves, if I'm spending 10 hours a week on jiu-jitsu, 10 hours a week on striking, 10 hours a week on grappling and cage work, 10 hours a week on my mental and cardio and all that. Meanwhile, homeboy over there is spending 40 hours a week on jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
What makes me think I'm going to grapple with him? Or 40 hours a week in boxing?
Yeah.
Or, what have you?
No, 100%.
It's this, we are the jack of all... MMA fighters are the jack of all trades, but the masters of none. While we mix the martial arts as well as we can, at the end of the day, these are still isolated martial arts.
For sure.
And when you start getting
That's
into this niche...
It.
You're gonna get smoked because this is their world.
I didn't even understand I just didn't understand the levels, and I didn't realize that jiu-jitsu and grappling had I didn't know what the ADCC was. I didn't know what, and keep in mind, while I'm going through this journey, grappling has exploded since then. You know what I mean? So like,
you're talking about the
like sports jiu-jitsu.
not just the profitability of it, but the public notoriety.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'll say the popularity.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is now more popular than it's ever been.
Yeah, it's more popular than
even the UFC is now getting it.
It's more popular than wrestling.
The UFC now realizes that MMA is, I don't want to say plateauing.
They have the UFC Fight Pass Invitational.
Yes.
My teammate
They're
Michael Pixley
branching
just
out.
did it.
They're doing Zuffa boxing. They're doing all these other, they see it as well. And here's the thing about Dana White. He's the best promoter in the world. And if he sees it, I like to follow the trends.
Yeah, he's trying to get paid. He knows
he knows what the market's leading.
But yeah, man. And
so you're learning all about, the real nuance of grappling.
I had no clue. So like my first 2 years when I was there, I just got my blue belt, and I'm learning the ropes really about how the rules work, how to pass properly, how to mount, back take, defend.
Really, you started from the basics like that?
Well, I mean, we were doing stuff for MMA. So there was
learned
a lot of bad habits I had trying to create. And there's a lot of bad habits I had already from wrestling. There's a lot of things you can do in wrestling that you can't do in jiu-jitsu, but you can, so I had a lot to fix. I was just a wrestler that was decent at jiu-jitsu at the time. And my first 2 years at the IBJJF level, I didn't win shit. I lost a lot. Like for 2 years, brutally. It was rough for me. It was hard. I watched, in those 4.5 years I was living on those mats, I watched hundreds of people. This is before the Daisy Fresh got big too. I watched hundreds of people come and go, try and live on those mats with me. Watch hundreds of people come in there, train with us for a day, leave the next morning. Train there for a week, leave. Train there for a month, leave. Train there for 6 months, leave. Train there for a year, not get what they want, leave. Hundreds of people.
And
what
was Heath saying at this time?
He said, listen, I know it's hard. I know you wake up and your hands hurt, your fingers hurt. I know it's cold and there's no heat. I know it's hot and the bugs are on your face in the summer. I know it's the coldest of cold and the hottest of hot when the seasons come and go. But just so you know, there's a bunch of little poor ass Brazilian kids that have fucking nothing that are in Brazil with mats that don't get mopped either. And they are fucking doing this shit and they're winning everything.
Yeah.
I promise you. You know why they do it? Because they don't have a choice. I promise you, if you do this shit and you take it seriously and you do what they're doing, this will be the most famous American team ever. I promise you. Told me that all the time. And I trusted him and I believed in him. And you know what happened? We're the most famous American team ever.
Yeah, I was just saying off the air, like the amount of time that has flown by, right? It's been almost a decade, actually probably a decade this year. We're by no means old, right? You're 31, I'm 31, I'm turning 32 in a couple weeks. But I was just telling our producer, like, you forget how much you've done already, right? And it's just kind of like this, it only magnifies these mentors even more in my mind. Like, if I feel the way I feel at 32, how does Mike or Phil feel, or Heath, sorry, I said Phil, Heath Pedigo feel now at this point in their career? How many people have they helped? How many lives have they shaped? How many killers have they created? You know what I mean? I want you to, you clearly have a lot of love and affinity for the gym, for Heath, for the guys around, but really walk me through that lifestyle change now. You're living at the gym, you're seeing guys come and go, you're really committing to jiu-jitsu. What is the goal? What was the goal?
The goal at the time was to become a world champion. Once I realized how dense and thick the competitive pool was and like competitive sport jiu-jitsu, I was like, what the heck? And dude, there was Division I level athletes competing in the sport. Ed Ruth was putting the gi on and competing at the Pan Ams. He was a 3-time NCAA Division I champ from Penn State.
Walking on the mats and putting on a gi.
You know what I mean? So like there was like high level competition going on. So like the goal was to win an adult level Pan Ams or World Championship. That was the goal. And it was tough, man. My first 2 years, like I said, I didn't succeed at all. My first 2 years I struggled. I was lucky to get, it took me about almost 2 years to get an IBJJF podium, to get a medal. You know what I mean?
What was that doing for your psyche? It
was hard.
Yeah.
Because
you're training, you're going out there, you're falling short.
Yeah, you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, is it worth it?
Am I good enough? Can I do this?
Am I wasting my time? Are my parents right? Should I just go move back to Florida and just be a real estate agent?
Are they constantly hammering you during this time?
No, but they're like, hey, what's going on?
Just in case.
And I just believed in the dream. I believed in Heath. I believed in what he told me. And a lot of people say they do, and then they don't.
Yeah.
People want human natures. They want immediate gratification. I was sold, bro. He saved me. He gave me a new life. I didn't care how many times I lost. I started wrestling when I was in 9th grade, 14 years old. I was late. I struggled in wrestling, and I didn't win very much stuff my first 2 years. And then I made the state my senior year, and I lost in the blood round. You know, I wasn't done yet. I didn't feel finished. So I found a way. I figured out some way, and I contacted every person I could, and I wrestled in college. And I struggled through college the first 2 years, and then I started having success. And then, you know, it never panned out. I never was able to get out on the podium. I just didn't feel done. I was hungry. I knew I could be great, and I just wanted to keep going. So I had all these coaches in my life, and like, I never met someone that believed in me and put so much effort psychologically and mentally and physically into me. I just said to myself, I was like, this guy is, if there's anyone that's going to take me to the place I want to go, of like the level that I want to be, this is the guy. I trust him. I genuinely trust him. I know that he's looking out for me in every shape of my life, outside of sports. And that's why I stuck with it, no matter through all the trials and tribulations and losses and, you know, heartbreaks and all that stuff. That's why I stuck by him. I stuck to his process. His process is foolproof. And you know what? Unfortunately, it took for him to have some, you know, silly documentary for everyone to realize it. You know, all it took was a couple white trash motherfuckers like me and all these guys who win at an international level in jiu-jitsu from a small town of 15,000. And we started winning. And someone took notice. They said, these guys are doing something different. Let's go check it out. So a photographer that was freelancing with Flow Grappling flew out to Mount Vernon, Illinois. He was originally from the Chicago area. That's how we knew him. We said, yeah, come out. You can stay for as long as you want. He came. He slept on the mats with us. He took photos of all of us and wrote down statements of shit that we said. And
God bless this photographer.
And he gave it to Flow Grappling. He did an article for Flow Grappling. This is before Flow Grappling was doing videos and stuff. This is before Flow Wrestling, Flow Sports, and all.
This was when Flow Grappling, I think, was separated, right? Or this was back when Flow Grappling had just started doing the streaming service.
Maybe not. Maybe not even. I don't even think they were. I think at the time they were just like a bulletin of results and stuff like that. They didn't have videos or docuseries.
Now they have, I think, the software that like all these wrestling programs use throughout states.
They're really on top of it now. But I remember the first movie, the first docuseries ever. You'll remember this, for Flow Wrestling ever, or Flow Sports in general, was Terry. The Terry Brands documentary. That was the first one ever.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
That was the first one. And that's how I always bring it back, because people, even wrestlers, forget. I'm like, that was the first one. And that was the pinnacle. That was the most viewed video in Flow Sports history. So they do this docuseries. I'm sorry, they do this, he puts this article out. Blows up in the jiu-jitsu world. People are reading it. Whoa, what the heck? What's Mount Vernon? Where's Mount Vernon? There's a little town. Andrew Wiltsey won this, and his brother did this, and so-and-so did this, and Heath Pedigo, who's that? Blew up. So Flo starts talking about it. Terry comes out maybe a couple months after the article. You know, they start doing video now.
Did they ever discuss it with? Did Heath ever discuss it with you guys? Like when they were approached. When he was approached.
So what happened was he talked with the original guy that did that article with us, Michael Sears, and Michael eventually got a position with Flo. They actually hired him after that
because he did such a good job.
Yeah, and he pitched the idea. He said, "Listen, these guys.
There's something there.
There's something there. Let's shoot an episode and see how it goes. Let's shoot a pilot. You know, like they would for
an episode 1. So
let's see how it goes." So they sent down a film crew. They shot it.
What are you guys all thinking when this is happening, though? I mean, like
we're excited. We're excited.
You're
wow, man, we've been in here in the trenches, we're freaking, dude, listen.
Was there any heads up, or was it like one day you guys just walked in and there's a camera?
No, Heath told us they're coming.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like,
you know what I mean? He told us.
So Heath had a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, but this is years in the making, and like we've been.
But what was that conversation like? Was Heath like, let's,
he said, hey, Michael Sears, talk to them. They're gonna do it. They'll be here. We were like, no shit. He's like, it's happening. Everything I fucking told you guys that was gonna happen is gonna happen. I was like, holy fuck. He's like, you guys are gonna be famous. You guys will be fucking on every single person's TV. You guys are gonna be famous. Anyone that does jiu-jitsu will know who you are. I was like, holy fuck, no way. So they come out, they send a film crew, they shoot all of us, they interview all of us, they watch our training regimen, they watch everything we do, sleep, everything. And
did it ever feel invasive?
No,
No,
we pushed it out there. We showed shit that people probably would never show. Like we were wild, bro. We were it was basically like a bunch of college guys fucking around and doing crazy stuff and training, and bro, it was the best times of my life. And I remember Heath saying that. I know it's hard. I know you're hurting. I know you're sore, but you'll look back on these days in this gym and you will realize they were the best days of your life. You'll think back and you'll say, that was the pinnacle. That was everything. That you'll wish you could be back in here. And he was right. He was right. I remember those days and I miss them. I don't miss living in the shit and having all the heat and the cold, but I miss that life. I miss that. And he was right. He was right about that. And it was cool, man. They shot us, and it immediately when they put it on Flow Grappling, the first season it was like three episodes, I think. It wasn't very many episodes. The first season was like 3 or 4 episodes because they weren't sure if it was gonna
land or not.
Yeah, they didn't know.
They didn't want to put too much into it and then not get the return.
Yeah, and it was a hit. It blew up. It immediately lit like fire, and every single person that did jiu-jitsu in the world
started reaching out to you guys.
Knew who we were. They were sending us boxes of stuff because we didn't have anything.
You mean like equipment and gear and shit?
Everything. Food, equipment, shirts,
who is
stickers.
They? Like companies, people?
Fans, companies.
No shit.
Companies, fans. I mean,
wow.
I mean, bro, we didn't have much. We were eating ramen noodles and eggs and stuff. We were going to the food pantries and getting freaking expired shit and eating it and drinking it. We had expired protein from GNC that we were getting for free. We had nothing, dude. You know what I mean? We spent all our time training, all the time. Heath made it a perfect environment, so there was never an excuse for you not to become a champion. If you wanted to be the best jiu-jitsu competitor in the world, there's no excuse. He had everything set for you. He had it financially perfect to where if you didn't have the money to do this shit that we were doing, you just didn't give a fuck that much.
Let me ask you, in this realm of like really facilitating and really digging down into this like one area, Mount Vernon, Illinois, where, if ever, was there an attribute or an attitude towards cross-training? You're talking about all these guys that are coming down to you and that kind of switched up some of the paradigm, but like, was there ever this like, we should also go here, this, there, whatever? Because you were talking about how Heath went down to New York at the Blue and then talked to John Donaher, and John was like, basically calling the epiphanous staph infection.
Yeah.
So is it just like, I'm trying to understand the nuance, the mentality, like we have a secret and we'll teach you the secret, or we're just really good at what we fucking do, but here's like some other people that could also do some.
So we have no problem cross training. Like I love training at different places. The only issue
is it pushed?
Yeah, we think everyone should train everywhere. We think everyone should.
God bless. I agree, by the way.
Yeah, we think everyone should train everywhere.
I agree, by the way.
You know what I mean? We just don't have a lot of options, man. Well,
you're in the Rust Belt. You're in the middle of both coasts. You know what I mean?
We're in a weird spot, man. Like there's nowhere for us to cross train at a high level. People are coming to us.
You talking about Heath? Like you're Daisy Fresh.
Yeah.
There's no reason for you guys to go locally and cross train.
There is nowhere locally. The closest local to us is St. Louis.
What about like, the coast? Like what about New York? What about California?
Yeah.
Okay,
like plenty of us have gone out and taught in California and Oregon.
But locally, they're coming to you.
There's just nowhere locally for us. Like our spot is the spot, and I don't mean that in a negative or
for jiu-jitsu, you're the gold standard.
But like Mount Vernon, Illinois, there's nothing there other than to work at the Continental Tire, the tire factory, Walgreens warehouse, or to be a professional jiu-jitsu athlete.
Could you imagine the guy bagging your like tires is like a black belt?
Yeah,
like,
and he'll
don't
choke
give him a fucking attitude.
Yeah, bro. And people in town know. Don't like if you train at Pedegos, okay. Like you know what I mean. And
you get the 20% discount.
Yeah. But yeah, man, there's just nowhere for us to go. I mean, dude, like listen, you want to know what we used to do? and this is just gonna sound cocky, but I don't mean it disrespectfully, but like we trained Sunday through Thursday hard, always trained hard. Saturdays we competed. Fridays we dojo stormed.
Dojo stormed?
Yeah, we would come to St. Louis and we would hit every gym we could and roll with every single person we could.
Just to what? Get a feeling
Just
of like
get
someone
good.
different?
Just get rounds of different people. But we would run through everybody.
How euphoric was it when
We didn't go there intentionally to hurt anybody. Or,
No, but that's what I was going to get to with my question.
We just wanted different looks from different people.
Well, let me ask you a kind of a douchey question. So like you're in this room full of killers, specific to jiu-jitsu, and you're really honing in on this craft, and then you're going to these other gyms. How is that positive affirmation for the skill set? Are you guys just running through people?
Most of the time we did, yeah. And people didn't like it. We had back then we were all very young and we were all very like
Brash.
White belt, blue belt. Well, we were never rude. We were never disrespectful. But never. We represented Heath. We represented PSF. But people didn't like that we were so
going in there and smashing the higher
We would
belts?
go in there and we would go. Like we were going. Like we would go into places.
Would you warn them or would you just show up?
We would show up. Most of the time, we would just show up.
Oh, that's why, because they weren't ready.
If it's an open mat, it's an open mat.
Fair, but okay. Let me give you the first thing I disagree with all night. Right. Let me give you some. Let me steal.
Most of the time, we would reach out.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying, right? So like, imagine
most of the time we
imagine
would
you're a
reach
gym owner, right? Like you coach wrestling now, okay?
Yeah.
So
and
imagine
we wouldn't headhunt like older guys and people we knew we could hurt.
Duly
we just
noted.
wanted to roll with good competition.
Think about the ego that comes with owning a gym and everything, right?
For sure.
So you're a wrestling coach now. Imagine like it's like a Tuesday mid-season. Some of your guys are sick, some of you guys are hurt, but someone's taking the day off or whatever. You're not really prepared to quote unquote show what you got. In comes this group of like
Killing
state
machines.
champions.
Yeah.
They're like, we want to roll with your guys, and you're like, yo, hold up, we were not ready for this.
We've shown
right?
up, and the black belts come up and say, "Hey, I got a bunch of guys in here that are just hobbyists.
Please don't hurt them."
Yes, and we're like, yeah, totally. You know what I mean? But like, look, if there's the Brazilian guy in the corner that's like trying to get it in, we're gonna get it in. We came there to get it in. And look, like, I know
The quote of the podcast is, "We came to get it in."
Yeah, bro. We wanted the smoke. We couldn't. We were so always like, dude. Listen, our blue belts our blue and white belts are the hungriest, like chomping at the bit, ready to train with anybody else because our room is so hard. They get pummeled half the time. But when they roll at a different gym, they're beating the crap out of someone's brown belt, someone's purple belt. You know what I mean? We would go to California and our white belts would pass the black belts and people would be like mad. And it's like,
no way.
Yeah, sure. They cuss Heath out and say you're a sandbag, you're a horrible coach. You sandbag all
meaning they thought that they were actually like blue, purple, brown, but they were acting like they were
sandbag
white.
all your students. You're a piece of shit. You should be ashamed of yourself. And he said,
I've heard that. I've heard that before from people.
You know what he says? I'd agree with you if they didn't fucking get their asses whooped at the Pan Ams and the Worlds. Yeah, they just beat the fuck out of your dude. But you know what? Some other white belt and blue belt beat his fucking ass. You know what I mean? We've all lost.
His metric. His metric is global.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He's trying to train us to become the champion. You know what I mean? He's not gonna.
There's a genius to that.
Yeah, bro.
There's a genius.
Yeah,
to that.
bro. I've learned so much from him, man. I mean, it goes without saying, but I mean, yeah, dude. I mean, we that was the lifestyle back then, and we would compete. We would train Sunday through Thursday. Friday, we would try and run around and find other gyms to cross train with, and then Saturdays we would drive so far, bro. We were driving to Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin. We were driving anywhere and everywhere we could go.
What are you doing? Just Googling gyms and being like, let's go there?
No. We were driving for competitions on Saturdays.
Forgive me. To compete. Okay.
So obviously anything that was in St. Louis, we were there because it was an hour and a half away. But then we were trying to hit everything because this is why. We had no money. We'd contact the promotions. We'd say, listen, I've got. And you know, what do jiu-jitsu promotions struggle with? Table workers, referees, stuff like that.
The support.
Yeah, like they struggle to get those things. I said, hey, I got 8 dudes. All of us are ready to work. We just want to compete.
So we'll work for free, just don't charge our guys?
Yep.
That's a fair trade.
Yep. And some tournaments did that for us. And some tournaments paid us on top of that.
God bless.
Most tournaments paid us on top of that because we were guaranteed, I'll bring 8 guys, I'll bring 10 guys, guaranteed. I'll bring extra if you need extra. So I made sure that we had, not only did we have free competition, we got paid. And so that thing that I started still holds to this day. We have guys that travel all over the country competing, getting mat time, and getting paid. while being professional jiu-jitsu athletes. It's not easy being a jiu-jitsu athlete, man.
No.
That's why Mount Vernon's so special, man. The price of living in Mount Vernon is nothing. For you to be able to live very low cost and pursue your career is possible in Mount Vernon. It's harder to do that in California. You'd have to live out of your car.
Can I expand on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sean Strickland, for all his crazy quotes, actually had a really good one when he said, if UFC fighters made the amount of money that the NBA, NHL, NFL fighters made, every UFC champion would be American. If you live in America and you fight for the UFC right now, the entry-level contract, I believe, is like, correct me if I'm wrong, let's just go on the positive end. Let's say it's 15 and 15. So your very first fight in the UFC is for $15,000 a show, $15,000 to win. Anyone who's been in mixed martial arts knows there's like an agent, a management fee. You're gonna have to give some kickback to your coach. Chances are your coach is like understanding of like your financial struggles. Maybe they don't take that 10% right off the bat. But anyway, you would have to fight 4 or 5 times a year and win make like enough money, not just to like live lavishly,
retire,
to be like lower middle class. You know what I mean? And it's a hard lifestyle. But if you live in the favelas of Brazil, training at Ova União, or if you live in the mountains of Dagestan, I heard Khabib. There was an interview Khabib did for like a Dagestani podcast / interview / news thing. But I really enjoy him as an individual because of like the psychology that it brings to fighting. Mm-hmm. And he was like basically like really harping on this because they were asking him, why did he retire? You can make all this money, you can do all this stuff. He goes, first of all, do you guys know where I live? He's like, I've made more money than everybody in my village combined will ever make in their lifetime. I'm fine. I don't need to make any more money. I'm not gonna go live in the some big city or whatever. He's like, I'm gonna make my gym the way my father made his gym, and I'm gonna train the next generation of guys, which is like a beautiful aspect. In Dagestan,
yeah,
which is like a beautiful. I mean, could you imagine as a father, like your son, like living up to the expectations that you set for them? Regardless, but let me extrapolate on this like money thing. If you're in Brazil, if you're in India, what have you, you could fight and lose your first fight in the UFC, and you're still making more than the median wage of your country. Whereas in the U.S., like this is just not enough for the level of cost of living. So Sean Strickland was kind of on to something there. It's like, yeah, this is pretty competitive and all that stuff, but if you started pumping money into this, if football players and Division I wrestlers were starting to look at MMA the same way they were starting to look at like right now, and we're going to get to this later, but like college wrestlers are choosing jiu-jitsu over MMA because it's going to start, the money's going to start flowing. It's already getting there. So it's like, oh, well, why do I have to learn all these other martial arts when I only have to learn one? The UFC has a real problem of like the economics of being bought out is really bearing fruit right now. Let me take you on a 1-minute spree.
Go ahead.
When Endeavor went public, it changed the game because Endeavor, WME, IMG, and Endeavor bought the UFC for, I believe it was $4.4 billion, right? The famous quote of Conor McGregor, it was worth every penny or whatever. That $4.4 billion is like a nut that they're going to have to crack. And they're going to have to get all these investors, these seed investors, these initial investors, their money back. So like the opportunity growth for these salaries and the payouts and all these other things you're kind of seeing is growing, but not at the same rate that the UFC financials are growing. You started seeing things like the Reebok deal, stripping the sponsors away from the fighters, giving them to the UFC as the company. And ever since Conor McGregor, and I would even make the argument that they're kind of breaking this with Alex Pereira, but ever since Conor McGregor, they never allowed for a fighter to get bigger than the promotion ever again.
It's true.
Conor and Ronda, for a brief moment,
no, you're right,
more people knew who they were than they knew what the UFC was.
That's for sure.
Ever since then, if you go to any fight night, whatever, I couldn't tell you the whole card. And even if I couldn't tell you all the fighters on it, right?
It's a good point. I never thought about that.
They're capping it because the money is better served at the company level than the individual level. The problem with that is you're creating a homogenized labor pool of like everyone kind of making the same amount of money. And then when you have an emerging market like jiu-jitsu, it's not the guys that have already committed to MMA that you have to worry about. For the next 4, 5, 6 years, it'll actually be a growing product because you have the next generation that really committed to MMA that's going to start flourishing. However, you're going to have strikers that are going to gravitate towards boxing because at the highest level, they can make more money. And when you start getting grapplers that can make more money, and by the way, same thing with wrestlers moving on to jiu-jitsu. But let's say you're a D1 wrestler and you're saying to yourself, like, I can make $1 million winning this tournament. Well, why would I ever get punched in the face? Why would I ever get kneed? Why do I have to win 10 fights before? It's happening now.
It's happening right
now. But the ripple effects of that, what will happen in 5 years from now? What I'm trying to say is, if the UFC doesn't do something yesterday to combat this, the overall product will suffer years from now because everything's kind of like this investment period. You're seeing the growth of all these other martial arts, and it's really starting to flourish. And I even think Dana sees it, so that's why he's kind of branching out. And in a lot of ways, I do think, and I'm open to argument here, but I think the UFC has peaked. I don't know if MMA is going to be the sport the way people look at mixed martial arts now, the youth, is not the way you and I looked at it.
No, it's a very different.
You can now look at individual martial arts. If you're a striker, you can go into Muay Thai, Glory, kickboxing, what have you. If you're a boxer, go into box. I mean, Saudi Arabia is paying you gold on the dollar, right? Mm-hmm. But now, for the first time, if you're a Division I All-American wrestler, you can start transitioning to jiu-jitsu. You don't have to go to the Olympics. You don't have to go to MMA. There's other avenues for you to acquire wealth.
There's 2 Division I wrestlers at that $1 million tournament, the CGI, that never even did a jiu-jitsu match before.
And they did very well.
Yeah, you know what they did? They weighed in and got $10,000. Mm. And they did great. And then you know what they did? They got $10,000 for doing one match. Why wouldn't you want to freaking not get punched in the face?
Fair.
To
argument though is that's the top of the top, right? And they only made, and the argument could be is that they only made $10,000. But what I'm saying is, and I think we'd agree on this, this is the start.
Yes, this is the start. This is the beginning. This is the ground floor. This is the whole sport's about to transform. And look, the only reason I know I don't need to go to MMA. I know I could have a more than fine career just doing only jiu-jitsu. It's just something that I feel like I needed to do. I started with MMA. I'd like to make a run at it and see how far I can go. I'm 31. I probably got 5 more years on my shelf. I'd like to give it as far as I can.
And we'll transition to this while simultaneously talking about the previous topic. But I'm curious when I spoke to you about this podcast, I told you that I wanted to talk to you about jiu-jitsu, your transition to it, and the life that you've kind of like assimilated yourself towards. And the very first thing you said was like, oh, I'm not done with MMA either. Is this a competitive thing? Is this like a business unfinished?
Business is unfinished for sure.
Where does that come from though? Like why this? It's like a chip on your shoulder.
I have 2 amateur fight wins. That's cool. I'm happy. That's great and all. But like,
yeah, but you're also a world champion in brown belt. So it's like,
I know, but like, I just feel like I have more to offer. I feel like I can reach another level. I didn't just try and become the best I could be in wrestling and jiu-jitsu just to do that. Like I want to be a fully well-rounded competitor in all aspects.
You want to be dangerous.
I want to be dangerous, man. I know
you already are dangerous.
And I know I can be. And I've rolled with some of these great fighters, and I know if I learn how to strike at a high level, I can hang with anybody.
I'm going to ask you this question again because I don't like that answer. You are a very dangerous individual in the world of grappling. What is pulling you to MMA? Ego?
I just know that I can. I just want to. It's not necessarily ego. I personally just feel like I'd be doing it myself. I don't want to look back when I'm 50 years old and say, I wonder what if I would have kept fighting.
That's a great answer, though.
He told me, become a world-class jiu-jitsu competitor, and then we can come back. Look, I got the No-Ghee Worlds coming up in December. It's a month and a half away. I'm probably... Look, Heath might not give me my black belt, but I'm pretty sure he's going to give me my black belt after the No-Gi Worlds. Only because he told me he was going to give it to me if I won the Masters Worlds, and I won it. And then he was like, I need you to run it, the No-Gi circuit. It's in 2 months. You could kill it. I want you to run it one last time at Brown. And I was like, okay. So, I took bronze at the adult just last month at the No-Gi Pan Ams. I'm the only Masters competitor to get a medal at the adult level. The adult level is 18 to 29 years old.
Can you explain also Masters? There's some people that might watch this and don't understand what you're talking about.
So, like, look, you could probably go to an MMA gym or a jiu-jitsu gym and, like, the 50-year-old guy in your class is like, I'm a world champion. And that's badass. Like, a Masters world title is badass still. But, like, the Masters is ages 30 and above. So I won the Masters 1. Masters 1 is still pretty tough. It's ages, if you're in your 30th year, you could be 29 years old. But it's 30 to, like, 32 or something like that.
the
still
athletic prime.
Yeah, and dude, listen, my first year doing the Masters 1, I got my ass whooped. This year, I dialed in, I came ready, I had 6 hard matches, and I was able to win. And I'm proud because, you know why? It's in the gi. It's in the gi. To win a world title in the gi, that's hard, especially for an American, especially for a guy that wrestled.
Can you extrapolate on that thought when you say because it's in the gi that you're adding kind of this accolade to it? Explain this one to me.
It's in the gi. I don't do
because what folk style wrestling is in a singlet. You're not having all these.
In the no-gi, it's all, you wear a rash guard, tight shirt, Under Armour type shirt, shorts. It's very tight. In the gi, it's like judo robe. You're grabbing and everything like that. It's very hard for a lot of MMA guys, wrestlers, and people that aren't used to it.
Can I extrapolate on that if you don't mind?
Go ahead.
Specifically speaking, with the gi versus no-gi, a lot of times the no-gi is looked at as a more friendly version of grappling to wrestling because it's a lot more body manipulation, which is similar to the lifestyle a folk style or a freestyle or a Greco-Roman wrestler will be accustomed to.
1,000%.
Judo has a gi top, so they can kind of transition to gi jiu-jitsu a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Whereas wrestlers don't necessarily have the manipulation of the articles of clothing on an individual, which if anyone who's ever grappled will tell you, it opens up a world of offense and defense.
It's so different, bro.
You just have more to worry about.
Yeah.
There's just more. You can grab the lapel, you can grab the sleeves, you can really use someone's attire against, or you can use your own attire for your own benefit. It just adds like a lasagna. It's like more layers of pasta, right?
And you know what it does as well? It develops different muscle fibers, muscle groups in your body, in your back, in your hips, in your
I thought
neck.
I had good grip strength from wrestling until I started doing a little bit of the gi, and I realized how weak my wrists were.
My fingers have transformed since I started doing jiu-jitsu. My fingers, I don't know if any of you guys can see it, but my fingers are a little crazy looking. And these aren't even that bad compared to most people I've seen, but the gi is very
demanding.
It's very unforgiving. But I'm happy I've done the gi. And the main reason that I stuck with the gi, and look, every wrestler will tell you, I hate the gi, blah, 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 blah. And Heath's never forced the gi on anyone. If there's guys in our gym that are like, I just do no gi, he's like, sure, go ahead. But you know why we all do gi and no gi? Everyone at PSF does for the most part, gi and no gi. You know why? Because if you don't, you miss half the training.
Yeah.
And that's not worth it for me.
Meaning what? There's a gi and a no-gi class?
Every day we do one no-gi and one gi. So if you don't do one or the other, you're out half your training. Everyone else on the team is getting double the training as you.
One of the most wise, dumb quotes I've ever heard was Eddie Bravo saying, training in the gi is like training in no gi, but in the gi.
What the fuck?
It's so true, though. It's like, you can do everything in the gi, you can do no gi. In the gi.
The way I always thought about it that helped me have a peace of mind with it, because look, everyone and their mom can make an excuse. Oh, I don't do that shit. It's stupid. Blah 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 blah. I always thought of it from a wrestling perspective as freestyle and Greco.
Yeah,
it's just different styles, the same exact sport.
Same sport, different rules.
Still gonna make you really great. And you know what? I still stand by that, and I don't compete in the gi, honestly, anymore outside of the Masters Worlds. I also don't compete in any Masters competition outside of the Masters Worlds. Every competition I do is an adult level.
But why?
Because I want to compete with the best people on the planet. I want to compete
And you believe that they're in no-gi?
No gi. Well, I'm better at no-gi. That's why I'm better at no-gi. I'm thinking about doing the adult pans this year in the gi. Just to test myself. But the gi, there's a lot of people in jiu-jitsu that only do gi, and those guys really shine in the gi, and they're great. But I haven't done as much gi because I'm trying to focus more on my no-gi. It's just, dude, the level of competition is so high. I'm trying so hard to keep up.
Isn't it also crazy how much of an onion martial arts is?
Dude.
We were talking about how like MMA guys can't really necessarily compete with like these nuanced, like focus on one martial art kind of guys. Like if you're an MMA guy, you're not going to compete with the boxer or the jiu-jitsu guy. But then, even if you go into jiu-jitsu, it's like there's layers underneath. Well, hold up now. Do you have the coat on or not? It's like, well, because if you have the coat on, you're going to be really good if you always keep the coat on.
Are you a no-gi guy that only does IBJJF, or are you a no-gi guy that
Depends on the rule set now, right?
Do you do ADCC?
Yeah.
Do you fight to win? You know what I mean?
Dude, Submission only. It's a completely different game.
Very, very different. And those are things you got to get used to. I love the gi. And I do plan on competing in the gi more, but me and our team right now and the world, the jiu-jitsu world right now, no-gi's hot.
Do you also think that that jiu-jitsu has kind of exploded in popularity because of the various rule set changes? You might disagree with this, but I did not see an explosion of popularity in gi or no-gi jiu-jitsu until submission only, until the EBI. I remember when Eddie Bravo first did his first one.
That's why I compete.
And they were trying to push for the more exciting visually for the crowd, this like finish style of jiu-jitsu. Imagine wrestling, but you have to win on points.
Yeah.
Well, then what the fuck are we doing? Like, I want to pin the guy.
That's why majority of our guys are heavy on the no-gi, because no-gi's where all the money's at. Yeah. No-gi's where the career's at. The gi is just for clout. To be completely honest with you, there's not very many competitive high-level jiu-jitsu guys that are getting paid top dollar for gi competition.
Why is that? I understand that you're saying that like gi is where the money's at.
Because of what you just said. Because
no-gi is easier for the casual audience?
Yes. They're used to MMA, and they can understand it more. When I put you in the gi in 50-50 and I hold you in lasso lapel guard for 10 minutes.
You've lost 80% of the crowd.
Yeah, your cousin and your grandma are like, honey, I'm tired of watching these two men hump on each other for the last 10 minutes.
Chael Sonnen has one of the best quotes. He's like, as a Republican, I don't believe in laying in between the legs of another man.
Unless you're punching him in the face. But, and I love the gi, man. It's just, career-wise, as a professional competitor, there's just more opportunity in the no-gi. And keep in mind, I still train in the gi. I still compete in the gi. I think I'm going to do the adult pans this year.
Let me ask you this, because we're talking about the money in this. Like, how much is the monetary gain weigh in on where you're competing? Because you're saying that, like, you know, the more of the money's in the no-gi, forgive me, and more of the popularity is exploding in the no-gi. Is that also, like, a factor? Like, when you guys are training, because you were telling me, like, you know, you can go out these tournaments and make some money and all this other stuff, but, like, how much of, like, your training now at this point in your career, not 5 years ago, but now, is like, well, you know, where are the market trends going? Where are the more fruitful endeavors? Where are, where's the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak? Or is that not a factor into it?
I think it's 100% kind of what we talked about earlier. I just think it's going to keep elevating. I think these tournaments are going to get deeper. I think the competition, look,
I do agree.
And like, other than people that are deep into jiu-jitsu right now, there's a whole plethora of young teenagers and young kids that are gonna just rampage the whole jiu-jitsu world in the next 10 years.
Dude, it's happening in MMA today.
They're hybrid wrestler jiu-jitsu kids. They're all gonna just run everybody over, because I'm telling you right now, yeah, the stakes are getting raised. Now there's $1 million jiu-jitsu tournaments, $10,000 buy-ins, all this stuff. It's coming. $100,000, $200,000 tournaments. It's coming, and it's gonna that will soon become the standard, and it will be bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's gonna keep raising the bar. And those jiu-jitsu hybrid wrestlers, they're eventually gonna get into MMA, and that's gonna raise the bar.
I don't know if I agree with that part at the very end, because it's like it's the equivalency of like why boxers don't go into MMA and why MMA go into boxers.
The only reason I disagree is because who's gonna do the MMA? You know who's gonna do it? The ones that win everything and get bored. The Buchechas, what do? He won everything. What do? Joined ONE FC. Bored. They're bored. They have money. Once you have money, you're bored.
You chase the next.
You're still young, and you know what? What they'll do? They'll go and try to become a superstar like Conor McGregor.
Fair. But then like the argument can be made is like let us not make the mistake of taking the exception and making it the rule. So like, yes, you might get the top of the top echelon guy. I mean, Michael Jordan, when he was like, winning championship after championship.
He got bored and played baseball.
So I do agree with that. But that's Michael Jordan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's Michael Jordan.
So it's like, where I think there could be a precedent at some level, I do agree with you.
Sure.
I don't necessarily think that'll be the norm.
I agree.
Think about how many MMA guys went over to boxing. Literally two high level guys.
And they're getting paid. But
they're getting smoked.
Yeah.
Conor got smoked.
Yeah.
And actually, Ngannou did very good against Tyson, but Tyson actually afterwards came and said, like, I didn't even fucking train for that fight. I didn't think that guy was going to be that good. So Tyson walked into that fight. You know what I mean? And Anthony Joshua really put the seal on that one. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I just don't see a world in which, because I came from MMA, and
you're right though, man, because the jiu-jitsu
MMA's tough in this aspect.
It's rough, bro. It's rough.
There's also a lot of ways to lose in MMA. Mm-hmm. It's the most ways to lose.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's the hardest sport to be truly undefeated in. That's why I think I love
agree.
Khabib. I love Khabib, but that's why John is the GOAT, is because John's been doing it longer and still undefeated.
Yeah,
right?
and he wins in multiple fashions.
Yes. Striking, submissions,
and
grappling.
Look, you can talk about his personal life, but he is the GOAT. He is the GOAT.
Listen, I need to start driving drunk and running into pregnant.
Yeah, he's the GOAT.
Seems to be like
He is the GOAT. Anyone that disagrees is lying. They're just a hater. He's the GOAT.
Also the people that talk about the steroid use is like, if you don't think before USADA that everyone wasn't on the sauce.
Everybody.
It's like, dude, come on now, stop. Like John was cheating, fair. But so was everybody else. When everyone's cheating, no one's cheating.
Yeah.
So either you do USADA, drug test everybody, make sure everybody's clean, or you don't and you shut the fuck up and let the best physician win.
For sure.
So, but to bring it back to jiu-jitsu, I guess the only thing I'm gonna say is if I can make, $500,000 winning this tournament,
you're right.
I'm not thinking. Let me go
punched in the face.
Let me go to the UFC and make. Maybe you'll
the only reason you should, and some people do, is because you have
get to that top level,
or you have that much notoriety. I guarantee you. And guys like Buchecha, stuff like that are getting paid
there's so many
hundreds of thousands.
limitations, and this is the problem with the UFC is like you eliminate them to have their own sponsors and stuff like that on fight night, where you can go, dude. Gordon Ryan looks like a NASCAR on his shorts when he goes to compete. Rightfully so.
He's the richest
Rightfully
man.
so.
He's the richest man in jiu-jitsu.
But he also deserves it. No one should be able to get in his way.
He wins.
So it's like. And this is why I think it's actually a detriment to the UFC. We're kind of elaborating on it from boxing, from jiu-jitsu in this specific interaction. If you don't allow for the money to roll downhill and you're really focused on paying back the investors, the sport will suffer. Mm-hmm. And I just said it to my producer while we were off air, but I'll say it again. When you incorporate money into any aspect of life, it will corrupt it. A passion will turn into a job real fucking quick. No, 100%. Porn stars say, hey, honey, I'm going to work today. You know what I mean? So come on now. And my fear is, because I love martial arts. I go to all the jiu-jitsu shows around town. I go to the MMA shows. I'll go to wrestling clinics and tournaments and stuff like that. I love combat. But I'd be lying to you if I said like, oh, everything's in the right trajectory. I think in certain martial arts it is. I think boxing's making a resurgence. I think there's never been a better time to do jiu-jitsu than now. It's growing. I think MMA has plateaued, and that's what scares me.
I don't disagree or agree with you really, but I 100% understand what you're saying, and I could see that happening. I could 1000% see that happening. We're from the same generation, man, and I feel that same. I hope it doesn't happen, but it's that you definitely bring a very valid point.
That's kind of why I had this, like, when you told me, like, oh, I'm going to come back to MMA, my very first inclination wasn't wow. My very first inclination was why? Why?
Yeah, why? It's personal. It's just personal.
Which is the right reason to do it for.
And I just...
You got that chip on your shoulder?
Look, dude, I might do 2 or 3 fights and be like, I'm good. You know what I mean? I might be like, I'm good. This ain't...
I think if you went to amateur MMA right now, it would be deeply disappointing.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm gonna probably go back.
You're gonna go back.
I'm gonna do 2 or 3,
and it's gonna be deeply disappointing because you're gonna do a camp. You're gonna cut weight. You're gonna go in there. And you're gonna be like, "Fuck, what did I train for?"
And they're not gonna show up.
Yeah,
I dealt with that back then, little now.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
I listen. Travel any path you want. I'll support you, and I will.
Dude, I'm not scared. That's the thing. I'm not scared to fail. Look, if MMA doesn't go my direction...
Alejandro, I don't think you'll fail.
That's okay.
It's not...
I don't think you think I'm going to fail. I'm just saying, like, that's why I'm okay with doing it.
I think it's going to be underwhelming.
I just don't
You're used to wrestling... Or sorry, not wrestling. You're used to competing at a world stage. What are you going to do now? Go fight for NFA or Shamrock locally and fight some amateur?
Maybe a couple. Maybe 1 or 2.
But then to what end, right? You go pro and then... I guess... I don't know, man. It's opportunity cost. Have you ever heard that term?
No,
right?
for
It's
sure.
like, what are you giving up for what are you taking? Mm-hmm. And I think to myself, like, if you're on the cusp of black belt and you really are getting to that level,
I want to compete at the adult level at black belt for a couple of years.
From what I hear, once you get to black belt, it is a different world.
It is.
Because now it's like...
I've competed against some of the best black belts there are, man. I already know what that feels like. And I know that when that day comes and I get my black belt, I know my life is going to change forever.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. I don't know why. It's like graduating a different grade. It's like...
More than that. It's graduating into a grade that then there's like... other grade,
it forces you. Well, it forces you to just reach another level. You don't have a choice. You immediately are in a different.
I know that there's.
You don't have a choice. You have to evolve.
I know that there's another belt after black belt. Like
that doesn't count.
But I'm talking about let me put it this way.
Those are seniority belts.
Exactly. It's like an accolade of
those are badass.
They are. Yeah, they are. But like, if you're a red belt, chances are you're also over the age of 50, 60, right? Yeah. So like, how much are you really competing with like the 30-year-old?
That's just. It's just cool. It's like getting a badge of honor. It's cool.
And I love it.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is like, if you're Alejandro, 31 years old, you get your black belt in the next year. 32-year-old Alejandro just got his black belt. You got some guys that are 38, 39, 40 that have had their black belt for 10 years, right? Yeah. And now you're competing with these guys consistently. Yep. And I guess what I'm trying to say is there might be this chip on your shoulder, but I guarantee you the competition level that you will face and the anxiety and the training camp and the professionalism in which you're going to have to conduct yourself and the how much you're going to have to hone both your physical and mental capabilities to compete against these black belts will be astronomical compared to competing against some amateur guy at the local MMA scene.
No, and I feel like you're going to be right about that. And you know what's funny, man? I struggled severely with that. Wrestling through high school, wrestling through college. I just couldn't really pull that. Even when I've had my two first MMA fights, dude, I'm out there nervous, scared. Actually, my second MMA fight, I was pretty confident. But my first one was my first time out there. I was fucking...
How am I going to do?
I was like... but once you're out there and the ding ding, it's all good. On. But dude, that I struggled with that. I could never pull out the best part of me when the time mattered. Sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't. Where's the consistency? The consistency is what makes someone that's what gives you your legacy. That's what makes you a champion.
That's the hardest thing in sports.
Correct.
Is consistency. And it's easy to be great one night. Mm-hmm. It's hard to do it over the course of time.
And I'll tell you one thing. I at my time at PSF, Heath Pedigo has brought the best out of me as not just a competitor, as a coach, but he has brought like all the best parts of me that my other coaches couldn't pull out. He got that and he yanked it out. He's not a wrestling coach. Yet he made me the best wrestler I possibly could ever be right now. Right now, I would pummel the wrestler I was my senior year of college. I would kill him. Since I've been at PSF, I've taken down and submitted multiple time Big Ten champions from Oklahoma State, Division I programs, and taken them down. And I have that confidence in me now because of Heath. Heath pulled that out of me. I didn't have that before I came to Mount Vernon. And it's not me hating on any of my previous coaches. It's just it took me to get to that point for it to happen. And now I luckily have a system and I have a belief in myself to be able to go and be consistent in these matches and these tournaments that I do in front of hundreds of people. And sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, but you know what? I go in there with the same mindset and the same plan every single time. Obviously the plan's a little different every now and then, but like I have a system and I feel confident. And sometimes it goes my way and sometimes it don't. Sometimes I did this and I should have done that. That's life, but I am very happy with how far I came and I feel very confident that it's only going to get better. I do not feel like I've hit my prime whatsoever. I feel like I think sometimes the plateaus are a little bit more than usual once you get to this level, but
early 30s is...
I feel confident that once I get my black belt, that's when my prime's going to start. I feel like that is when shit is going to get real. I feel confident. I'm healthy. I'm motivated. I'm young. I've trained.
Why this?
I just think that...
Because you could get your black belt tomorrow. How much different would you be Alejandro today from tomorrow?
Belts mean nothing. Belts mean absolutely nothing. The only reason I say that is because there's something in the back of your mind that you're like, I gotta get shit to another level. I'm here now. And like, you don't even cognitively really do it or tell yourself, hey, I need to get to this level. But once you get your foot on that mat with these other guys at this next level, you don't have a freaking choice. If we were gladiators, we don't have a freaking choice. It's the fight or flight. You die or you live. So I have no choice but to evolve. And there's nothing that I can do. It's weird because it's like, I remember being at blue and thinking, man, it's going to be wild when I have to compete with these purple belts. And then I get to purple belt and I'm winning. And it's like, when I'm purple belt, I'm like, man, I don't know. This is going to be crazy when I get to brown. I can't imagine being on the brown belt podium. And then I'm there. So it's just like, I see that now. It's like, man, I can't believe one day I might be on that black belt podium. I feel like one day I'm going to do it. Because I've already done it at every other belt. And look, I know all belts aren't equal. But I've been doing the same shit that I've been doing for the last 9 years. And I feel like I can get there.
I think you can too.
You know what I mean? I'm just not done yet. I don't feel like I'm done. And look, one day I will be done. And I'll be okay with that. I got a bunch of kids and a bunch of people that I care about and care about me, and I'll coach them and I'll be happy. I won't look back and be regretful. Sure, I wish I could have did this and that better, and what if I would have been here, what if I would have been there, but I got a bunch of people that love and care about me. It's not just about money, it's not just about winning. I got a support system of human beings that genuinely care about me.
I can't resonate with that more. I've told this story multiple times, but I'll say it one more time shortly for you. When I was deciding that I was done with fighting, one of these like things in my back of my head was like, you know, this is what I've been doing for the last 10 years. What am I if not a fighter? I'm gonna a loser. I'm this, I'm that. And then like literally the very next day, it was like, Arion, you're a husband, you're a father, you're doing fine. Like you've made so many connections, you've made so many friends in a large expanse. Like the reason this podcast started was because of that, right? Like it's like I know so many people from so many different walks of life that approach life so differently. And it's like I get the blessing now to sit here and talk to you. But it all stemmed from martial arts. It all stemmed from me choosing at 13 years old to step on that wrestling mat for the very first time. I think when we're in it, we have this idea what being out of it would be like. But we've spent so much time in that light that we start to think that it doesn't follow you afterwards. It might not shine as brightly, but I don't feel any more, or I don't feel any less manly. I don't feel any less like everything I'm doing now is adequate, similar to when I was doing martial arts. And when you tell me like, you know, I'm not done yet, and when that day comes, I will have these various people around me. I cannot explain to you how right you are.
Yeah,
you
man.
are
I mean,
absolutely
listen,
correct.
if you and so many amazing competitors and the Olympic level athletes, and so many of these guys, I mean, Michael Phelps. I mean, the guy was borderline suicidal after he won all those Olympic golds because his life felt meaningless.
What's left after this?
You can't allow your performance and your I mean, look, you have to be in a certain psychological state and mental state to be able to reach those points. So it's understand why people have struggled with that at times. But like, I'm not gonna fall out of my sanity because I can't be a competitor anymore.
Would you agree with this? The same mental acuity and mental toughness that will lead you to be a supreme winner could also be your catalyst for failure in terms of like, you know, the highest of highs, the dip in that low. But I would also make the argument that the mental capacity that it takes to really fixate on being supreme in any aspect of life would also make your mental acuity so strong that any down you feel, you're going to be able to bounce back.
Yeah.
I know so many people that are so mentally strong, and usually these incredibly tough people are assimilated into a group, and it's usually martial arts. Sometimes it's, you know, trauma in the life and all that stuff. But if I were to take like, you know, the 15% out, 85% of the tough people I meet mentally, physically, spiritually, morally, they come from discipline and work ethic.
And that's all I can identify with.
Yes, and it's but like if I had this conversation with any wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy, even boxers, kickboxers, they'd all resonate with this. They'd be like, going to practice Monday through Sunday is fucking tough.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other things I would rather do. Yet I came here, I'm sore, I'm tired, I'm all these other things, but now I have to compete. And then I lost in front of my family and friends, but now I have to bounce back from that, get back to training, and get back to the next one. And maybe I win that one, and I can't let it get too much to my head because I remember what it was like to lose. Be the hammer, be the nail, and then you get to this highest level, and then one day it's gone. But sometimes I feel like we're so fixated on the destination that we don't spend enough time appreciating the path. It's kind of like what I said earlier, how much things we've done, right? Like, it's only been 10 years, but how much have we done? And I was so fixated on like, this is where I'm going to be in 10 years from now that I completely forgot I was looking at the tree and I forgot what the forest looked like.
Yeah, you forget to enjoy the journey. You forget to enjoy the process. And I'm guilty of that. You know what I mean? In your head, you're thinking, I have to reach it. I have to have to be a state champ. I have to be a national champ. I have to be an All-American.
Take fighting out of it.
Yeah.
Friend.
Yeah.
Father. Coach.
Yeah.
Like,
I need to get this promotion.
I'm competitive at everything I do.
Yeah.
I'm competitive at everything I do. And sometimes I think to myself, did I go into martial arts and became competitive, or did I go into martial arts because I was competitive? Like, I don't know which one. Like you know, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. Like, which one came first? I'm not sure.
I wasn't really competitive. It was mostly I started late. I started in high school. That's when I started wrestling.
So did I. My freshman year of high school.
Yeah, and I just
shout out Coach Ford.
Hey, Coach Ford, and I just never was a part of anything. I sucked at all sports. My dad was a professional soccer player from South America.
That's a fucking
He was a professional indoor soccer player from Uruguay in South America. Uruguay won the first World Cup, in case anyone didn't know that, but they did. Yeah, he was a professional indoor soccer player, and he moved to New York for work, met my mom, blah, 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 and they put me in all sports. They put me in soccer. I was not a soccer player. Sucked. Baseball, they put me in left field and told me to keep walking back past the fence. That's how bad I was.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I
played all basketball. I mean, I lasted a week maybe in basketball. I was just not athletic. I wasn't like obese or like out of shape or anything. I just wasn't an athlete. I had no cognitive. I don't know why.
Didn't jive with you.
Yeah, I just my mom and dad, they loved me and they gave me unconditional love, but like they just didn't. They put me in sports, but they weren't like really like support.
But they were also trying to like throw you at everything and see what sticks, maybe.
And like, so I got to like 8th grade and I was like, all right, well, all the cool kids are doing football, so I'm gonna do football. So I worked really hard. I tried to get on the football team at my high school, and
they told you weren't cool enough.
No, I got on the football team, and I sucked like severely bad. I was like 4th string JV. Like the freshman, I was
if
like
everyone's
3rd
hurt,
string.
you can
like
play.
They were like, you know what I mean? And I just did it because my friends were doing it. And luckily for me, I was really lucky. My high school had just won the state championships the year before I got there in wrestling. So I already had a really good wrestling program at the school I was at.
That had already been built.
Yep. So I never even knew that wrestling was a sport in high school. That's how oblivious I was. I didn't even know wrestling was a thing. I'd never even heard of it before. The only wrestling I had heard of was WWE, and I never even watched that. So my football coach was like, hey, buddy, all the football players are going to join the wrestling team to get better for football. You should too. And I was like, okay, cool. Joined, sucked balls. They ran us to death. It was a hard program because it was a state championship program. They ran us like dogs. No mercy. I actually almost quit my first week because the coaches were so ruthless.
Why didn't you?
Because I knew I could be good. I swear I was this close. I bruised my toe in wrestling. I bruised it really bad. It like hurt really bad.
You knew you could be good.
And I remember my coach made us run bleachers, and I was like, Coach, my toe's messed up. He's like, quit. We would get like 60 kids every season to join, and they would bury our asses so that we would only have like 30 or 40.
That's how we are every year.
Yeah. And
let me ask you a question though. You say you knew you could be. I said
I
asked why did you pull through?
When I was on the mat, sure I got my ass whooped a ton, but like I saw progression. Like, I was doing this, and then they said, do that, and I was doing that. And they said, do that a little bit more like this, and I would do this, a little bit more like that. And I saw myself getting better and figuring it out. and I could see like all other sports, it was like it was almost like I was dyslexic. But like with the wrestling, I saw hope. I saw I could figure this out. And I had coaches. I had my club coach at the time, and I owe him a lot of credit. His name was Dave Parmenter, and he
shout out Dave.
Yeah, and he believed in me, and he always I had nothing as a kid. When my parents split, my mom had nothing. We lived paycheck to paycheck, ran out of food all the time. It was rough, and I never had money. Literally, like if any of my friends wanted to bring me around with them, they had to know, hey, we're gonna have to pay for Alejandro, and we're gonna have to make sure we pay for his food too, because he doesn't have anything. And I always felt bad about that, but I didn't have a choice. Back then, kids couldn't work. You know what I mean? It wasn't like some of these like old farm towns and like you could get a little side job and the side hustle. Like that wasn't a thing. Like kids couldn't work. So I just broke my whole life. And that coach, he believed in me, and he's that coach. Everyone's had that coach. You know, you had Coach Ford, and he believed in me, and he made sure I never missed a tournament. He made sure I was at every off-season tournament. He made sure I was at every single club practice. I couldn't even afford to be a part of the club. So you know what he had me do? I worked with all the little kids, because I told you I started in 9th grade. So I worked with our little kids club program, and I was his assistant, and I helped him, and that's how I got better faster, because I helped him with that, and by doing that, he let me do the high school club for free because I helped him with the little kids club.
I have no idea how similar you and I are.
That's what got me caught up fast, because
I helped with Little League as well.
You had to.
Every Tuesday and Thursday.
If you wanted it that bad, you had to.
It was more than that, though. You kind of hit the nail on the head. I felt behind. I felt like I started.
That's how I felt.
I was like, oh my God, everybody else that I'm wrestling did Little League. Like they were wrestling since they were like 10, even younger. So I would like wrestle the high schoolers, and then I would help my coach with Little League practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I would train, you would go to school, you get out of school, we would get out at 2:30. I would do wrestling practice from 2:30 to 5. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would stay. I brought a second pair of clothes.
At 6, you would teach the kids.
6 to 7:30. Yeah. And you're helping the Little League kids.
I would do the same thing.
But then, you know what it got me to do? Did my sit-outs more. Did my stand-ups more. Worked on my double legs. Worked on my single legs.
You don't feel comfortable.
And when you teach something, then you start looking at like, oh, hold up. I'm missing 3 of the 4 steps here.
Because you don't feel comfortable teaching Jimmy how to do the freaking sit-out
if you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, you're not going to teach him the wrong way to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, you're going to say, hey, coach, Jimmy's asking about the sit-out, and I don't really know how to do it. And then you'll never forget how to do it because he taught that little kid in front of you.
Or even worse, if you could only teach the athletic gifted kids, that means you don't know it yourself. If you can't teach the bottom of the barrel, that means you don't understand the technique.
There's guys out there that are Division I national champions that can never teach a kid from nothing to something. They're great at teaching good kids and making them great. But they can never take a kid that knew nothing, that can't even do a front roll or back roll or a front handspring. You can't teach that kid
to be a state qualifier
or a state champ. That's the difference between coaches right there. When you can create something from nothing, and look, there's plenty of coaches that are in the Hall of Fame that taught good guys and made them great. But like, if you can take someone that's been nothing and make them a champion and be consistent with that with other people, that's impressive.
I agree.
That's impressive.
I did want to ask you, if you don't mind, you and I both coach high school wrestling, different states, but same age group. What made you go back to coaching wrestling? Why aren't you coaching jiu-jitsu? Why aren't you, why was it wrestling? What is it about that?
So, I never wanted to coach wrestling because all the things that I told myself that I wish I would have had when I was wrestling, and I don't have any ill will towards any of my coaches. Coaching is very hard, and you can only do so much, even as a high school or a collegiate coach. So I don't have any ill will towards my coaches, but there was a lot of things that I didn't get. I didn't get a lot of support, and I didn't get a lot of time. I didn't get a lot of, there's things that...
When you say time, do you mean one-on-one?
Yeah, just one-on-one stuff, and I got left behind a lot, because I wasn't the elite guy on the team. And there were things that I would have done differently. And I always told myself, if I'm a coach, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to do it like that. I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to do it like that. I'm going to do it right. I'm not going to fuck around.
Quote, unquote.
That's why I never wanted to coach, because it's going to be you're going to have to do it. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it right. I'm not freaking half-assing coaching someone and ruining someone's life. That's how important being a coach is. You can literally make or break someone's life. There's coaches out there that ruin people's lives. There's coaches out there that change people's lives and make them champions.
Expand on that, because whenever I think of mentorship, I've always thought of it as like a positive kind of trend analysis. But you're hitting on something that I didn't think about, like where a good coach can really pick up someone, young and really give them purpose and direction. I mean, by logic would dictate that a bad coach could easily do the opposite.
Correct. You want to hear a good example? The coach before me that I took the program from was in the Olympic Village. He was a very high-level wrestler. When I came to Mount Vernon and I took over the program, they were going to kill it because for the last 10 years, they had lost every duel they'd ever had, and they only had 5 kids on the team.
Wow.
And you're talking about a guy that was at the Olympic Village in Colorado Springs. Why the heck are these... Why can't you fill a roster?
What's the disconnect here?
Because he didn't care. He burned the program to the ground. Who knows how many kids' lives he affected.
Well, when you say he didn't care, what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? What was he doing? Was he not showing up to practice? Was he what do you mean he doesn't care?
You should go through the motions, collect a paycheck. You know what I mean? Do the bare minimum.
I was there.
Show up. Hey, go run 4 miles. When you get done, we'll wrestle. Stuff like that. You know what I mean?
So no structure, no actual.
You show up 5 minutes late. Why? Just being mean for no reason. Oh, you don't want to do it this way? Get off my team.
Can I ask you about that real quick, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Do you feel like some of these wrestling coaches have like rose-tinted goggles and they think themselves like better than they actually were back in the day, and they're trying to relive glory years? Because I kind of see it sometimes.
Well, listen, this is the problem with wrestling. One, and you'll agree with this, there's a ton of ego in wrestling.
Yes.
Every wrestler thinks their dick's 12 inches long and they can beat the next wrestler next to them.
First of all, yours isn't.
We can only hope.
But no, I agree with you. I think everyone thinks that their method is the best, and everyone wants to coach their way.
There's a lot of ego in wrestling, So, I just think that you have to be humble in the sport as a coach. And there's a huge generational gap now. And everyone says, oh, my generation was so tough. But little junior's generation, they're a bunch of, pussies and they can't do this. But look, man, every generation's different.
Back in my day, we ran 5 miles. You guys only run 3.
Exactly. And look, dude, every generation is different. But look, our generation is different than the generation before us. The coaches before me and you are different. You can't treat the kids of this generation like you did
Same way
20 years ago. It
I
just
agree.
ain't gonna work. I have a coach on my staff. He coached back in '93, and I still have him on the staff because he's passionate about the program. He cares about the program. But sometimes he butts heads with a lot of kids because you can't coach the kids like you did back in 2000.
It's a different generation.
You can't coach the kids like you did in 1995.
Is that good or bad? When you say you can't coach the kids, some people look at that as a negative connotation.
No, you know what it is? It's frustrating. But you know what? That's a learning curve. People change. Things change. Businesses change, sports change. You have to evolve with the program.
I agree.
These kids nowadays, if you don't assimilate with them, if you don't relate with them, if you don't appreciate the things that they're going through, they're not going to listen to you.
They're going to disconnect.
They're going to disconnect, and they're going to walk away. At my school, where I'm at Mount Vernon, there's a lot of kids that don't have good homes. I'm not blessed to have a program with every single kid having incredible parents. I have kids that have amazing parents that are supportive and are there for every match and are messaging me constantly, Coach, what can I do? What can Jimmy do? What can Bobby do? What can Dylan do? I saw a lot of my kids, their parents are busy working 60 hours a week in a factory or trapping coke on the weekends or doing whatever they have to do. Or maybe they're not even around and they're raised by their grandma or their grandpa because their mom was a dope fiend or their dad's locked up in prison. You know what I mean?
And them being on the mats is a two birds, one stone.
Yeah, and you know what?
It's
not just about winning. It's not just about going to college. We're changing kids' lives. Dude, you know what I mean? I care more about changing a kid's life than winning a championship.
You might agree with this, but sending a kid to a community college instead of a penitentiary is just as much of an achievement
100%
as sending a kid to a full ride.
100%. And I pride myself on sending, since I started coaching at Mount Vernon Township High School, I pride myself on sending one kid to college, at minimum one kid to college every year that I've been there. And all those kids, and dude, listen, all I ever wanted, I was one of those kids. And all I ever tried to do while I was coaching and while I'm doing this, I've never been an assistant coach. I got thrown into a head coaching position. Shit sucks.
You gotta deal with all the administration.
Yeah, this shit sucks. I hate public schools.
I get CC'd on all the emails, but I don't have to respond. And I'm like, thank God.
But I genuinely enjoy changing kids' lives because I know what it's like to be in their shoes. And the world has changed dramatically. And things aren't like how they used to be. And the teachers are ruthless.
Do you think it's harder now to be a kid than when we were?
Yes.
I do too.
It's 1,000% harder.
Too.
And you know what's sad? The teachers can't understand it because they're become nose blind to it. Because they freaking are so used to doing the same crap with the same kids in the same time every single day. They don't realize that what's happening around them, they're clocking in and clocking out and pushing the shit under the rug. There's only a small percentage, maybe 5% of teachers and coaches that really understand what the frick is going on.
Here's my retaliation to this. I don't disagree with anything you've said, but I would make that same comment on everybody in every industry, in every walk of life.
Sure.
When you go to doctors, 10 to 15% of them are great. 30% of them might be above average. The rest of them are just like collecting a paycheck, right?
Yep.
Same thing with like attorneys, tattoo artists, lifeguards.
No, you're right.
Insert your industry. If you're trying to find the exceptional people that are really trying, like, go above and beyond, make a difference, that's few and far between.
You know what's the shittiest part about that? Teachers, coaches, doctors, attorneys, all have to do with they are in charge of other people's livelihood.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just collect a paycheck. And that's scary because you're dealing with people's lives here, whether it be kids, adults, everything.
Here's my response to that. I've often said one of the things that frustrates me about this podcast is not the guests that I can get, but the guests that I can't. It's incredibly difficult. It's proving incredibly difficult to get a teacher on. And I want to get a teacher on because I think that job, similar to law enforcement, is impossible. How can you keep administration happy? How can you keep parents happy? How can you keep kids happy? It's like a Venn diagram. You might have some interlap between the three circles, but they're completely different circles. And when you factor into the equation that they're paid, what, $55,000, $58,000, like is like the median teacher's salary, and that's including the coasts, right? I don't really think you're setting these people up for success. I don't disagree with anything you've said. The only caveat I would add is like, we have the luxury of passion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Someone somewhere made an effect on us that was so engraved in us that it created a passion within us. And it may have not just been one person, because I think we both attest to this. I had a great first coach, you had a great first coach, but then I had a great second coach. I had a great third coach. I had a great fourth coach. I had a great family system. Like, my parents didn't divorce, but I had a great mother and I had a great father. I was poor in money, but rich in love, right? And I sometimes have to take a step back. And though my life was not as fortuitous as I wish it would have been, in a lot of ways, I was more wealthy than I had actually understood at the time.
Oh, yeah, man.
Whether it was upbringing, timing, people in my life, what have you. I think you are correct. I just don't think there is a real clear and concise solution. So let's say 15% of teachers actually care. Well, how do we get that number to 50? Do we have to pay them $100,000? Yeah. Is money going to be what makes them care? I would make the argument, I don't know about you, and this is not like a test. I don't get paid to coach. I did it originally because my head coach asked me. Mm. And if anyone outside of him would have asked me,
you would have said no.
I would have said no. Yeah. Like, you're out of your fucking
I don't blame
mind.
you.
Here's my hourly rate. You guys can't afford me.
My coach is the one that got me to do it.
But, and I think you will agree with me on this one, because I've been a coach now for 3 years. I don't know how long you've been coaching. How long have you been coaching?
This is my fourth year.
Fourth year. Okay, so we're kind of the same.
Yeah.
My first year, I was like, you motherfuckers are lucky I'm here. I'm doing it because of this man. After that first year, That second year I came back because I wanted to see some of the kids.
Yeah.
And now this third year, I'm coming back because some of these kids are now seniors, and I want to see like the culmination of their
Wait till
work.
you get to year 4, man.
Dude, I'm already, I know I'm stuck because now I'm looking at like some of these sophomores that were like freshmen last year, and I thought to myself, I'm going to wait till these guys graduate and then I'm going to be done. But then I see some of these sophomores that were their first year last year, and I think to myself, well, I want to see what they fucking do next year and the year after that too. I want to be there for them as well. And now I'm like, what started as a you're welcome coach turned into a thank you kids.
So let me piggyback off this for you. So after my first year coaching, me and Michael Pixley, I don't know if you know who Michael Pixley is. Michael Pixley is one of the top grapplers on the
familiar, but I don't know if I know him.
He's one of the top grapplers on the planet. He was an NCAA champion, an AIA national champion. This year, he beat the number one guy at the ADCC. He submitted Nicholas Murigali. He was the guy predicted to win double gold. So he's blown up in the jiu-jitsu world now. But he's won the Pan Ams, won the Worlds. He's incredible. He's a purple belt, but he's pummeled tons of black belts. Like, he's very well known. One of the hottest grapplers.
Phenom.
Yeah, one of the hottest grapplers on the stage right now. So the reason I started coaching is because Michael moved to Mount Vernon to do jiu-jitsu professionally. We had 2 or 3 other coaches that were collegiate. You know, they wrestled in the past and collegiate level and high school level, high level. And Heath was like, if there was a time to do it, this is it. Do it.
Why? If you don't mind, like, what was the?
Because they were going to kill the program. You remember, they were going to kill Mount.
Had you not gone, wrestling's done.
They were like, look, the last 10 years they've gotten pummeled. They've never even won a match. They got 4 kids on the team, 5 kids on the team. They're going to kill it. So he said, look, dude, they're going to kill it. If there was a time, this is it. You guys can rebirth the whole program. And we did.
God bless.
Me and Michael got the coaching staff. We took it over. That same year, we filled a full roster, had a winning season. The next year, we won the regional championships. And the last year, we won the regional championships again, back-to-back years. This year, we're trying to break history at our school and do three-peat. First time ever for our school. That's our goal. After the first year, though,
what effect does that have on the school? Because now you have this team that's winning in this sort of like endeavor. Are you seeing a difference in the kids now?
Yes,
yeah.
Slowly but surely.
Success breeds success.
The school, not so much. I mean, it is.
There's always politics at play.
In Illinois, basketball is king.
Why? Just because it makes money?
Illinois. It's just Illinois.
Oh,
basketball is king in Illinois, and football comes right after.
Missouri, it's football.
And then baseball comes right after that, and then wrestling. So for them, it's like, cool. That's awesome that wrestling is doing all right. You know what I mean? So we don't get. My athletic director treats me like gold, and I'm blessed to have him. But like the school as a whole, I don't feel a lot of love, and I don't necessarily coach there for the school. I coach there strictly for the kids. I don't. They try to get me to teach there and be a sub and I'm not interested in being involved in that school with any way, shape, or form.
Because of the administration?
I'm just not happy with it. I don't like how they treat the kids.
But if the administration was different, you'd float the idea of subbing and all these other things.
For sure, I'd like to be more involved. But like, I just don't.
I think they would benefit from someone like you being around all the kids.
I just don't like how, as a whole, the kids are treated. I think a lot of kids come from broken homes and don't have a fair chance. And look, some kids are pieces of crap and are going to end up in prison anyways. But some kids can be saved. And but
you got to try.
You got to try. And a lot
try and fail. Okay.
A lot of people get blind to that because of years of experience, and they are cool with pushing these kids under the rug and letting them fail instead of giving them hope. You can say one thing to one kid and change his life forever. I promise you.
I agree with that.
I really believe that, and I just want to help. I just want to do for these kids what I wish was done for me. And I'm not saying the coaches that I had didn't do great things for me. I just, everything can always be better in your life and your career and how things went. And I try to do everything I freaking can to make sure I leave no stone unturned. So every kid can't look at me and say, that guy left me hanging, left me high and dry. I'm going to do everything I possibly can. I don't care if you're the kid that can't fucking do a single leg, can't do a front roll, or you're the kid that's the state finalist. I'm going to treat you the same, and I'm going to give you the same opportunities. And that's the type of person I am. And then when that day ends, I won't coach. Because I'm not going to do it right. I'm going to only do it right. If I'm not going to do it right, I'm not going to do it at all. That's why I didn't want to coach in the first place, because I knew what it was going to take. And I didn't want to have to do that. But he talked me into it because we had the team, and we had the team to do it. But anyways, where I was going with this was, where things really changed for me and why I'm like so gung ho on coaching wrestling now is because after that first year of coaching, me and Michael were like, whoa, this shit's badass. You know what I mean? You know what we need to do now? We need to start a kids program.
Little League.
So me and Michael immediately, after our first year, the second year, we started the PSF Wrestling Academy. Heath had already, and here's the key to building a successful program for anyone that wants to know or anything like that. Support is the key. If you don't have support, you're going to struggle. And you can build a program without support. But we were blessed enough to have the Daisy Fresh and Pedigo Submission Fighting as a strong support system already. Not just in jiu-jitsu, but in our city, in our town.
A member of the community.
And when we took over that high school program and boomed it right out of the gate and changed all those kids, the city saw that. Because for the longest time, they saw Pedigo as like a,
A stain?
Yeah, a stain. Because Heath and his brothers growing up were really rough. And they were just mean and rough, and if you disrespected them, it wasn't like, "Hey, man, don't say that." It was like, "You got your job.
Fighting.
You got your job broken." They grew up poor. They grew up.
So they had a.
They were nice guys, man. But if people constantly picked on them because they were the tough guys,
But they had made a name for themselves within
correct.
the local community.
And they got arrested a lot as kids for fights and stuff like that. So the administration of the schools and the police constantly knew about them, and his last name was stained. Pedigo Submission Fighting was stained, and it's sad that it took me to start the wrestling, to become the coach at the wrestling program for the town then
to realize the value
of Pedigo Submission Fighting. And that's why me and Pixley named our kids program the PSF Wrestling Academy, because it changed our lives and changed so many people's lives, and he's changed so many people's lives. And that's why we called it the PSF Wrestling Academy. We didn't want to call it, Wajner, Dro, Pixley Wrestling, naming it after ourselves. That place is what made it special. So that's why we named it the PSF Wrestling Academy. And this is year 3. We're 1 year behind with the high school. So year 4 with the high school, year 3 with the kids program. And dude, let me tell you, there has never been a state championship team in Southern Illinois. All the state championship teams are in Chicago.
Northern Illinois.
I promise you, I feel confident. My kids, me and Pixley's kids, our program, our little kids program, they're so good that when they touch that high school mat, we will run everybody over. I promise you. They're beating some of the best kids around, and we're only in year 3.
I don't doubt it, and I'm also envious.
I can't wait.
I wish we could start a little league program at Afton. You want to know what the barrier to entry to that one is?
What's that?
Time, people.
Yep.
I can't dedicate the time. You want to know what I do?
That's hard.
You want to know what I try to do? Off season, I tell these kids, I'm like, listen, if you want to be good at wrestling, you have to wrestle year round. These guys that are like trying to go for like Division I, Division II, there is no off season wrestling. What they'll do is they'll folk style in the winter, they'll freestyle in the spring, they'll Greco-Roman in the summer, or some variation of that.
You know how small the world is?
Yeah.
Listen, if you're hitting the circuit, you hang out with the same motherfuckers
all the time.
Every weekend.
See the same guys at the same tournaments.
This guy's from Alaska, Nebraska, fucking California.
We'll see him again next year,
I see him again next weekend in this state in Iowa.
I want to start a little league program so bad because I understand how important a feeder league is. Because, I'll tell you right now.
Shit changes when you do that,
Not just that, but you don't have to start on single legs and double legs week 1. You can already start with like some of the...
That feeder program, I'm telling you.
It's everything.
I deal with... And my patience... And I've worked on it, and I have a lot of patience, man.
Because, you have to with kids.
Oh, dude, it's been rough.
They're not bad. They just don't know. They need
They
direction.
don't know if they don't know.
They need direction and discipline, and I look at them the same way I look at wet clay.
But
I can mold you.
I tell you what, man. When you start working with these young little kids, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And you're like, what if I could have got Jimmy?
Well, you see their innocence.
What if I could have got Jimmy when he was a freaking 5th grader instead of a 9th grader or 10th grader?
You ever heard the quote, I never blame the child, I blame the parent. I blame the parents. Mm-hmm. I agree with that quote. Like, whenever I look at a kid, if you're under the age of 18, you're still forming. You don't know anything.
Dude, if you're
a product of your environment.
If you're under the age of 30, bro.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I'm 31 and I feel like I'm just
Yes, because you've built wisdom. But here's what I will say. I actually disagree with that because I believe by the time you're 21, most of it is in the sauce. You might change a little bit by 25, But like, if you're a piece of shit at 21,
you're probably gonna be a piece
let's
of shit.
see.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But like, if you're a piece of shit at 16, I can change you by 17.
I agree with that.
If you're like, you know, underprivileged at 6, we can turn that around by 7.
You know what's the sad thing though, man? Like, you can only do so much shit on your own.
Yes.
And it's sad. I hate saying this out loud, but I fail more kids that I try and save than I save. Because they have to want to be saved.
Not just that.
They have to want to improve.
But Alejandro, they're with you for 2.5 hours a day on a season. So out of 3 months out of the year.
For 7 days a week, though. For 3 months.
Yeah.
It's a long
What I'm trying
time.
to say is then they're at home more and all these other things.
Yeah.
This is how I view it. If I can give, my life was changed by this sport. If I can change one kid's life, regardless if it's wrestling, maybe it's like the discipline they learn from wrestling. Maybe it's the work ethic. Maybe they go on and never wrestle or do any sort of sports outside, you know, and they go to college or maybe they go to trade school, but then they leave, they lead a healthy, prosperous life. It was worth it because I can't buy that. Everything else that I can make money, I can buy. I can't buy the shit that I learned that was given to me by time. So it's like, at some point, you have to give that time back. And you might resonate with this too. This is the genius of Heath and Mike. They already knew this and were doing this, but with adults, with you at 22, with me at 21. This is their genius. We're just now understanding this.
Yeah.
We're doing it with young kids. How long until we do it with adults too? Maybe I am wrong. Maybe you can learn until 30. Seriously. Now that I'm thinking about it to like its natural conclusion.
You'd be surprised how many guys, grown men, show up to Pedigo submission fighting
and change.
Bro, dude, we're getting a lot of kids lately, but like, bro, like when I first moved there 9 years ago, it's all grown men. Lost grown men. Lost all of them. That's why so many of them didn't last in the beginning. You know why they started lasting a little bit more? Because there was a little bit more of a guarantee when the documentary came out. They're like, oh, this is real.
Proof is in the pudding.
Before the documentary, people were like, what the fuck am I doing? Living in this town, in this little ass freaking laundromat nobody even knows about. You just had to believe back then and have faith back then.
I learned three things from this podcast today. Number one, you and I are actually not that far different, man. Seriously, we live.
You got more hair than me. I started coaching wrestling and it all fell out.
Dude, being a head coach will do that to you. No, but we've always kind of had a Venn diagram of like our inner circles and stuff like that. We know a lot of the same people and we lived a very similar life, it sounds like, which is interesting. The other thing I've learned is that there is something to be a service, or there's something to serve, something better than yourself. And I think we could both agree that, you know, giving up your time, giving to the generation that is going to come after you the way the generation before you gave to you is honorable and it's right. Mm-hmm. And lastly, it's never too late. Anybody can be saved.
It's never too late, man. It's never too late.
Whether it's through martial arts or religion or what have you, I don't think it's ever too late.
It's never too late, man. We get guys that are like in their 30s and 40s and they want to start training and change their life. And it changes their life, man.
Of course it does.
You know what I mean?
I think martial arts is the best therapeutic, both mentally and physically, for men.
You want to know what changed everything for me?
And women, but...
You want to know what changed everything for me in my professional grappling career, my professional athletic career as a whole? Coaching. I started coaching. My wrestling leveled up tenfold. My jiu-jitsu leveled up tenfold. Because as a coach, you start having to figure out how people's minds work and how to make them great. And by doing that, you figure out how to make yourself great. And I swear, man, I leveled up tenfold when I started coaching. I never wanted to coach. But the second I was forced to, and I had to push myself out there, because if I didn't, these kids would suffer without my dedication. My own personal game blew up. Michael Pixley, he was already an NCAA champ and an NAIA national champ in wrestling. His wrestling increased when we took over that high school program. All my other coaches, they're wrestling leveled up because we bought in tenfold into that program to make sure those kids got every cent, every ounce that we could give them. If I could tell any coaches out there, or anyone that's considering coaching, or if you want to coach, if you want to become a champion yourself, start coaching. And don't do it half-assed, because it won't work. It won't. You got to freaking go all in, but don't forget about yourself. Always be there, make sure you train, hold yourself accountable. Don't make excuses and say, I'm tired from coaching. Always make time for yourself. It's a hard one to do, but I do it. I train at least a minimum. During wrestling season, I train a minimum of once a day, and then I wrestle with my kids. When I'm not in wrestling season and it's the off season, I'm still coaching. I coach year round, but when it's the off season, I do train twice a day still. You have to hold yourself accountable.
Lead by example.
If you are a competitor and you want to coach, do it. But do not give yourself the excuse to cut yourself short, because your body is like a bicycle, and if you leave it in your garage and you don't use it, it will fucking fall apart. But if you ride that motherfucker every day, it will stay greased and ride perfectly. And you have to stay active, because the second you stop, the road to getting back to where you were is very hard to achieve. And some people do it, but more people do not. So stay with it. And there's always a way to get back, but if you want to stay in it, don't fall out.
Alejandro, I'm really glad you came on the Easy Talk, brother.
Me too,
seriously,
bro.
I'm glad you made the drive. I'm glad you made the time. I can't tell you how enjoyable this was for me. And truly, this was the first time we've sat down in probably a decade, but I'm really glad we did it.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. It's nostalgic.
It's a time capsule. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you.